We'll call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Spokley. He's on Zoom, by the way. Matt, can you unmute? Can you hear us?
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Berlant.
Here.
Dowden Calvillo.
Here.
Riddell Harris. Here. And Mayor Amara.
Present. Thank you. And please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So good evening. This is the time for mayor's commendations, proclamations, acknowledgements, and announcements. And we don't have any commendations or proclamations at this time, but I would like to say for some of you who might leave that I want to let you know that we have two very important citizens of Auburn we are going to adjourn this meeting tonight in honor of. And that is Ken Tokatomi and Frank Calabretta. And I will, at this time, so that we can do them honor and while everyone's here, a vice mayor is going to expand on Ken Tokatomi's accomplishments. But before she does, I just do want to say on a personal level, Ken was very important to our community and to me personally. His time and expertise was important for me as he was my treasurer, and I think he was the treasurer for many of us here. And he worked on many campaigns, probably most of you in the audience. He was a good friend to me, and I leaned on him for advice. And looking through my text, my last communication with him was him saying, come on, let's go to this function and contribute to this. And so he got people together. He was truly an important person who really supported our community. He loved our community and was always looking for the betterment of Auburn. So with that, I know there's other council people who would like to expand, but I'll have Vice Mayor Dowden Calvillo speak in his honor. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think all of us certainly have had some interaction with Ken over the years, and he will be sorely missed. There was a wonderful and very lengthy obituary in the Auburn Journal, and I don't want to read it all just because it is pretty long, but I will submit it for the purposes of the record so that we can have it in there. But you know, Ken, he was born in Auburn, but raised in Newcastle. And, you know, and Auburn was always his home. He just was such a champion for public education, for community service, for really just stepping up to the plate and helping those in need. He started the Thanksgiving community dinner, which my daughter and I volunteered at this year. You know, he was always so active with Salvation Army. He was elected to the Placer County Board of Education. I think he served 20 years on that board. We had interaction there too, because my other hat, I serve on a school board down in Rockland, and he was always a champion for charters. And, you know, and for Placer High School, I first came back to the community and Ken got me, he roped me into supporting that first bond, high school bond. And I remember that was a time when it was tough to really get support for those kinds of things. But there I was, I found myself all over stomping, you know, in support for that initial bond. And then of course we did it again with Measure G. But, you know, he just so many different issues. I mean, he encouraged people to run for office. He supported people as treasurer. Kiwanis, he was in the Kiwanis Club. Just a phenomenal leader, and he will just be so sorely missed. And I'm glad that we can at least adjourn tonight's meeting in his memory. And I know that they're planning a celebratory event in August. So definitely look forward to attending that. And he was on the Joss House. I can't forget the Joss House, Sandy, because my own kid, you know, and such a champion for that particular venue as well. So many ways that he has touched so many people, and he will be sorely missed.
Thank you. That was beautifully said. And is there anyone else that would like to contribute? I don't want to force anybody.
Yeah, I'll just add, one of the things that we retrospectively get to see, unfortunately, after people pass, is their contributions, not just the contributions that were listed, but I bet you most of the people in this room that interacted with him, but if you look at the comments at Facebook, the overarching theme was he was everybody's best friend, right? He treated everyone and gave them his focus. And not a lot of people do that. Again, the list is rightfully long, and there's a lot of people in our community that are, as you know, dedicated in a number of different projects. But again, I think the thing that separates Ken is the fact that he made everybody he talked to feel important. Of course, he was just buttering you up to get money.
That's right.
Your comment about your last text message made me look up mine, and not the last one, but the second to last one says, "Sorry, you're coming to the fundraiser tonight." So Ken was very good at literally bending people's arms, and that's going to be sorely missed in our community, because he probably raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not into the millions, in all of the different initiatives that he took. And so I guess it's now on the rest of us to carry that legacy in all those projects. So he will definitely be missed. So thank you.
Absolutely. And anyone else?
I probably had the least amount of experience with him. He was, he was very, a very kind man. I only got to know him after he got sick, but he still made the time to talk to me and explain how the financials work with a campaign. And I remember I had an event in the park that had 5 people at it. He was one of them. And so he was just, even though he wasn't feeling his best, and he had told me that, he was still going out of his way to help people and to help the community. So I definitely would have wished that I had more time with him, but he was, the few times that I got to actually interact with him, he was just a great guy.
Thank you. Matt? I'm not sure if is he on?
I'm on. I'll just echo what everybody said. Ken was an institution in our community and did a lot of great things. He was the power behind a lot of the initiatives and a lot of the campaigns, as mentioned previously by my colleagues. Obviously, hearing of his passing, very sad news for me and my family. He will certainly be missed.
Thank you, Councilman Spokane. And then the other person is, I want to recognize and adjourn in honor of, is Frank Calabretta. And he has contributed to our community. Maybe he wasn't quite as known around the community because he was a quiet gentleman, but he resided in Auburn for nearly 50 years. He was a native of Chicago. He had a bail bonds business that was located in downtown Auburn for many years, and eventually he moved to Atwood Road. And I know many of us here know about his Atwood Road business because of his Christmas decorations and parties that most of us attended. He contributed to our town in many ways, and the annual Christmas light extravaganza would attract people from really all over the county. And not only that, he cooked for numerous functions, various charitable organizations, political campaigns, and other causes. He was a close friend to notable figures who've also passed, including Bill Lipschultz, Judge Yana Harrow, Joe Carroll, and many others. He's a huge person and very close friend of mine. He was generous with his time and money, and he'll be greatly missed by all who knew him. So I'd like to adjourn the meeting in his honor as well. So with that, if anybody has anything to add, otherwise I will continue. Thank you for listening to this, and we will proceed with the agenda approval. And this is the time set aside for council members and/or the public to ask for removal, postponement, or a change to the listed sequence of an agenda item. The agenda will be approved by consensus of the council. Do I have any motions?
I'll move approval of the agenda as proposed.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine in nature and will be approved by one blanket motion with a roll call vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless persons request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for discussion and separate action. Any items removed will be considered after the motion to approve the consent calendar. Do I have anyone here that's interested in removing any items?
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to make a statement on number 5. I'd like to remove 5, please.
Remove 5, okay. Okay. Do I have a motion? Oh, public comment. Is there anyone here? Anyone here in the public that would like to remove an item?
Not hearing it, I'll make a motion that we approve the consent calendar without item number 5.
I'll second.
Roll call vote?
Councilmember Spokely,
Yes.
Councilmember Berlant,
Aye.
Dowden Calvillo,
Aye.
Riddell Harris,
Aye.
and Mayor Amara.
Yes, thank you very much. And so item number 5, purchase of the 2022 Yamaha all-terrain vehicle by the APD.
So I had a comment really, and John and I spoke about this earlier. I'm fully supportive of the purchase of the ATV for the police department. I can see it being used in a multitude of scenarios. But I did note that the purchase was at a facility in Rockland. And so we talked about the fact that we do have Auburn Polaris in Auburn. And so the city manager indicated that they will be going, they actually reached out to them and they weren't responsive at first. So I think that's why they actually went and looked at Rockland, because they weren't hearing back, but they will touch base with Auburn one more time before they actually make that purchase. So.
Great, thank you. Any more discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll move approval of by resolution to approve and authorize the city manager or his designee to purchase the 2022 Yamaha all-terrain vehicle.
I'll second.
Councilmember Spokely,
Yes.
Berlant,
Aye.
Dowden Calvillo,
Aye.
Riddell Harris,
Aye.
and Mayor Amara.
Yes, thank you very much. Public comment. This is the time so that the public may speak to the council on any item not on the agenda. Please make your comments as brief as possible. The council cannot act on these items not included on the agenda. However, the items will be automatically referred to staff. Council members also have the option to speak on any item not on the agenda at this time. So do I have any public comment from, first of all, from the council?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to really quickly mention, I believe acknowledged this at Medlars, but for those that weren't there, the Auburn Arts Commission as well, separately, but in conjunction with the Downtown Business Association, continue to fund the music around town. The Downtown Business Association has been funding for the past couple of weekends now, the music at Central Square. If any of you went on Saturday, Central Square was packed. It was its own little concert. And then the Auburn Arts Commission is putting on Sunday, they put on their first series of the 2022 Summer Concert Series right behind us in the beautiful Auburn School Park Preserve. And so I would definitely encourage not only to go support the musicians, many of them are local, but what a great way for us to continue to use the park that's behind us. I love that the symphony will be back there this year, but to have it almost every weekend, every Sunday, I should say, for the next several weeks in a row. And so April Maynard's done a great job with the Auburn Arts Commission on the summer concert series on Sunday, and then Doreen Drake from the Auburn Arts Commission has been the one who has scouted the talent, done a really good job of picking the musicians out at Central Square, again, funded by the Downtown Business Association. So
Thank you. And I second that. And I outed Doreen Drake. She told me you said that. So anyway, no. So it's wonderful. Go, please attend. It's free. It's wonderful. And they need support and would love, just check it out. You'll be impressed. And I know most of you have probably been there.
And I had something too. Our city manager might be mentioning this later, but of course we have the Western States Endurance Run that's coming up. We saw the banners out front to celebrate that. So that's the 25th and 26th. We'll have, I'm not sure how many runners do you remember, John? There's a limit. Because of that they go through the wild.
They have a 5-year rolling average, and that average cannot exceed 369 runners.
That's
So
what it is,
it-
369.
So it
We've
makes
got-
it the most exclusive endurance run in the world.
And we've got more than, I think, 100 international runners that are coming. And so that should be a great event. I know we have our barbecue that the city is sponsoring. So, but the finish line is always a fun night too. So that'll be on the 24th. So hope to
Finish
see you
about
there.
nine, they expect 9 o'clock.
Between 7 and 9, depending on how hot it is. I mean, they
True.
can come in as early as 7, but
So be there at 7.
What bib number did our city manager get in
Yeah.
the race?
he's double zero.
000 this year.
So anyone from the public? I see we have one. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I also wanted to say that ARD is putting on some great things, especially for children this summer. There's some great programs out there and they've been doing a wonderful job. So I wanted to give them their credit as well and thank our Public Works for working with ARD so well on some of the projects that they've been doing. I know they needed some help with some slow signs out in front of one of their buildings, and Public Works has been just doing a really great job with our transit, all kinds of great things. So I just wanted to say thank you to them for all of their hard work. The other thing is, John, you're going to have to remind me of the date. There's a police officer run for Special Olympics that's going through town that I feel like I never seem to remember until the day it happens. Do we remember
Yes,
what day that's on?
That's Friday. It's
Is
Friday.
it this Friday?
Yes.
Okay, so there is this Friday, they go right through the middle of town and they end at the courthouse, and all the different service, the sheriffs and the police department, they all come out and they run and they have the Olympic torch, and it's a really great opportunity for people to come out and support them.
We were there last year.
Yeah, we were there last year, and I found out the morning of, so I just wanted to let people know that it's on Friday. So thank you.
Thank you.
What
And
bib number are the lieutenants wearing?
They're wearing blue.
blue bib. Councilman Spokely?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to mention why I'm out of town. I'm up in Eugene, Oregon, celebrating my daughter's graduation from college. My youngest daughter is graduating from college. So I apologize for not being there, but here virtually, and certainly a lot of celebration going on around her achievement of graduating in environmental studies from the University of Oregon.
Congratulations. Very, very good.
Congratulations.
An Auburn
you.
product doing very well. Thank you. From the public, Mike, Mr. Holmes, would you
Oh, yes.
like to
Well,
speak?
just to, for the record, it's Mike Holmes, who is a citizen of Auburn. And I want to thank all of your comments about Ken Tokutomi, was a good friend of mine as well, and well-deserved. I'm looking forward, well, not looking forward, but hoping to attend his ceremonial memorial in the future. Also, I wanted to remind you that tomorrow is Flag Day. So hopefully those of you who have flags that you keep under wraps may put them out in front of your house and so forth to celebrate Flag Day. This past Saturday, I went to the Elks Lodge to honor Ken Hash, who was a member of the Hook and Ladder, Auburn Fire Hook and Ladder Company. Several people there mentioned to me they were concerned about the dry rot at the El Dorado Street Firehouse, which is on the National Register of Historic Places. Major work was completed on that firehouse about 15 years ago, but additional work needs to be undertaken to preserve it further. So I'd like the city to take note of that, and maybe we can work together between the Hook and Ladder guys and the city to get that corrected. So anyway, that's what I have to say for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to item, excuse me. And I had a wedding this weekend. That's why I have the hoarse voice. My daughter, not my wedding. So
Renewing her vows.
that's right. Okay, so public hearing. Auburn State Theater, 985 Lincoln Way, designation to City of Auburn's Register of Historical Buildings and Places. Your city manager.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I'm going to take a shot at this. So tonight, presented before you is a public hearing and a recommendation that the council adopt a resolution in support of putting 985 Lincoln Way, also known as the Auburn State Theater, on the city's Register of Historic Buildings and Places. Just a real quick presentation to the council. At the let's see. The Historic Design Review Commission on May 10th held a public hearing in consideration of this. I will share with you, they did a great job. They went through and included in the agenda packet is a very comprehensive report and the analysis that was done regarding this nomination. The main components of the reason for the designation gets to the modernist design of the building and the real quality that it brings to Auburn. There are many state theaters throughout the state of California, and there's no question Auburn has the best one. If you look at the interior is probably the most representative of the very modernist and kind of the Art Deco design on the inside. The current look of the building right now, the overall preservation, the style of the building. One of the things about modernist architecture doesn't mean that you can't paint things or do things that actually enhance the overall look. In the case of the Auburn Theater, you have a very quality building that's attractive and people love it. Combined with some of the things, you know what, in most cities, no neon. In Auburn, we got neon going on. The accoutrement for the building includes beautiful mural on the back. This is the building is already included with a registry form that was filled out. But the way in Auburn, we have an entire ordinance in the city's municipal code, which has the criteria. In order for a building to be considered quote unquote historic, it has to be included within the register of historic buildings and places. And that's what's being considered tonight. This is a picture of the building from probably back in the 1950s. And I will tell you the commission really went through. I thought, well, you know, this is going to be a real easy presentation. The quality of the overall commission, really, they dug into various elements of it to justify that. And I'll just read very quickly the main reason for it. 985 Lincoln Way, the Auburn State Theater, is an example of a modern movement architecture constructed in 1930. Is comprised of two-story stucco building with double-hung wooden frame windows on the upper story, a recessed entry flanked by four large aluminum frame store windows at the bottom, chevron design tile detail atop, geometric designs, and stucco exterior. The neon Art Deco style state blade sign, not only in its width and its height, the building has been utilized as a movie theater or a community entertainment and civic pride for almost 92 years. The most important thing about this building is that it's still in use, and it provides absolute quality entertainment, and it really is to the credit of the organization. If you drive throughout the state of California, most of the state theaters are dead. They are basically relics that sit mostly in disrepair. And without question, the Auburn State Theater is one of those buildings that has had not only a renaissance, but also a reinforcement. the level of programming that goes on with the State Theater keeps it going and is really an anchor within our downtown. So with that, staff's recommend that you conduct a public hearing and receive input. The applicant for tonight, Colleen Sands, is here along with other members from the State Theater. And what I would suggest is that if you have any questions of staff, feel free, or open the public hearing. My suggestion is that you ask the applicant to come up and make any comments that they want, and then take any others. And then staff is recommending adoption.
State Theater to come on up.
I'm also going to be joined by Mr. Mike Holmes. My name is Colleen Sands. I am the CEO and president of the board of directors of the Auburn State Theater. And I would like to thank you in advance for your time and your consideration tonight. Mike has been spearheading this desired designation for many years now, and working close hand in hand with the city. It's taken us about a year to get to this point, but that was a very illuminating process to see what we needed to acquire this designation. As John said, the theater is open still. We are doing at least one show, if not two, every single week. We show movies. We are one of the biggest economic motivators in the downtown Auburn. And I have nothing but great things to say about the State Theater, and drove by a State Theater last night in Marysville, and it's very, very sad to see that it's completely shut down and there's nothing going on in the other State Theater. So I thank you again for your consideration, and I'm here to answer any questions if you have of me, or if Mike has something else to say.
So do I have anyone in the council that would like to have any questions?
I don't
There was
have
a
any-
large backup, I know, and we appreciate that.
I was
Thank
going
you.
to say, I don't have any questions, but I do have some comments. So would you like me to make that
Go
now
ahead.
or now?
Go
Oh,
ahead.
okay.
That'd be fine.
I just want to say what a gem the State Theater is here in Auburn. And I remember, I think it was Kathy and Cheryl and I served on the council, and we were just starting, efforts to preserve, actually, and to fix up the State Theater. And it was, there was a lot of planning, a lot of money, and just but it's so much work has gone into it, and it's just such a gem. And I'm so proud of all the volunteers that have worked so hard. I mean, it's first rate. It really is. And we're so fortunate to have it in our community. And you've got such great films and entertainment, and I'll be there for the Western States, the
Awesome.
film, this week, actually.
You and a couple hundred of your closest friends.
Yes. And I should have mentioned that too, because that's going to be a lot of fun. I mean,
Yes.
but it's just, there's so many different opportunities for entertainment and education. And I'm incredibly grateful that we have the State Theater. And I'm very happy to support putting it on our list of historic buildings. It really gives it a little extra esteem, if you will. There aren't really any additional requirements that would be required of it, because it's already in the historic, zone, district, actually historic district zone, with regards to any kind of modifications to the building and so forth. It has to go to the Historic Design Review Committee anyway. So, but I'm happy to support this. And I'm just, again, so very pleased that we have such a wonderful State Theater in our community, and such great volunteers that work tirelessly to make it what it is. So
Thank you. Thank you.
my little 2 cents. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Riddell Harris, you're
Thank you. I also am very supportive of this. I grew up going to there as a movie theater, and it was kind of not at the greatest of movie theaters when it was in that state. And so when I got to see it after it had been transformed and gone to musicals there, and then performed there as in my group called Cola Voce several times, it was just such a great experience to be in that space. And it was just so well done when it was brought back to life. So I'm very supportive of this. I think it's a great thing for our community. And I really think it's a wonderful thing that everyone, even outside our community, gets to experience. So thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What I'll do, I think I have a sneaky suspicion we'll have the other council people want to say something too, but I want to open up to the public. I'm going to interrupt it for a second and open up to the public. Are there any comments from the public?
Mike wanted to speak.
Okay, Mike, thank you.
Well, I too spent many unuseful years at the State Theater watching movies, but anyway, and fully supportive of this action that you're about to take tonight, at least based on the comments that I've heard so far. And I just want to point out that, Auburn is a city with a lot of historic buildings. According to my calculation, it's been 26 years since a building was added to the register of historic buildings in the city of Auburn. And that is too long. We've got a lot of other buildings that should be recognized for their historic value. And, I'm hoping that in the near future, the city will appoint a new city historian who could be useful in helping to research those buildings that need to be recognized and added to the list. We've got, last my count, we had about 17 buildings that are on the National Register of Historic Places. We tried to get the State Theater on there, but because the ticket box that was out in front by the sidewalk had been taken down, it no longer had that authority to be recognized as a National Register of Historic Buildings. So we need to be mindful of that in the future, and hopefully we can get additional buildings and possibly some qualified that are privately owned under the Mills Act that
Is this referring to our agenda item right now?
well, yes,
Okay,
but this is just yeah, okay. So anyway, just mention that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And I do want to say thank you, Mike, for initiating this. We're very supportive. So is there anyone else from the public that has any questions or comments? Okay, well, I'll close the public hearing then. And Councilman Berlant?
Sure. Well, not to give it away, but I too completely support this. Maybe I was younger when I went to the movie theater in the 90s. I don't remember it being negative, but maybe I was just too young and just enamored by Disney and children's movies. But what you guys have done, and especially those that have worked on this project for what now over 20 years, it really is a gem in our community. It wasn't a gem as a movie theater, even whenever that prime time of movie theaters it was. This now is unique, right? The not just the physical appearance, not just the interior, but the quality performances that are put on there. So congratulations to all of you. I guess I didn't really understand why it took you a year to have to go through the bureaucracy to do this, and no negative of city staff who I know probably worked really hard to make that happen.
No.
But I'm really glad to see your hard work and the hard work of whoever from staff participated at all the different levels get it to tonight, because it is a really important designation. And I agree with Mike. It would be great to see continued recognition for the historical preservation that the community has done throughout our community. So thank you, colleague.
Thank you.
Councilman Spokely?
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So,
Yes.
so just to clarify, and
There's his hand.
maybe John, can you guys hear me okay?
Can you speak up or can you turn it up?
Yell louder?
A little bit louder, please.
All right, no problem. I'll speak up as loud as I can. I want to clarify this. This is adding the State Theater, which I concur with all of the accolades that my fellow council members have mentioned about the work that's been done and the restoration of this incredible, feature of our community. We love to go to events there. My family does. It's an incredible thing. I've had other council people from other communities come up to us and say, how the heck did you guys restore your state theater? We have one. And like Councilwoman Rodell Harris mentioned, theirs is closed down and ours is thriving. So again, fully supportive of state theater in all ways. I want to make sure that with respect to the listing, that this is just the local listing, not the national listing for state historic spaces. And I guess I'll qualify that comment with maybe a question for the city manager, maybe even for Colleen. But if this registration occurs, does that create additional financial implications for the State Theater Board with respect to improvements to the property in any way? Because I've heard in the past, and I've dealt with it in the past, while serving on the HDRC, that some of the buildings that were on the National Registry came with a requirement that improvements had to be prevailing wage funded improvements, which increased the cost of the improvements anywhere between 30 and 40. I would venture to say today it would be even a higher percentage. So I'm just curious from John or Colleen on the board, if they know the answer to that question. Does this action trigger any prevailing wage costs for improvements to occur in the state theater that may need to occur in the future?
Gary, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, happy to jump in on that. It does not increase costs for the city, so I'll start with that. It does potentially trigger CEQA if there's a change that changes historical significance for the building. And the historic building code will apply, which is that section of the building code that specifically applies to historic buildings. It accommodates differences between construction and construction types that aren't currently done. And then, of course, at the city level, the HDRC now for a different approval process. But those are the three changes. Could increase some costs. Depends on what's done in the future.
But there's no prevailing wage rate because it's just inclusion on the city's list,
Right.
not the state
Not-
or the national
Correct.
list. So really, that was one of the things, is that there was no true impact because they're already subject to review by the Historic Design Review Commission because they're in the zone.
Right.
So there really isn't any kind of impact.
No.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Matt? I mean, Councilman Spokane?
It does. And again,
You have to speak up, please.
it does answer my questions. And again, I'm fully supportive of all of the work that the board has done to preserve this theater. I think we've shown at the city that we're supportive of the theater. So I'm supportive of this particular action.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Spokely. That was an important clarification to be made. And I would like to say, I, of course, echo what all the councilmen and women have said. I do have, probably due to my youthful age, the unique opportunity of being able to walk down to the theater from the school, the Catholic school that I went to, and 25 cents getting into the movies. And now it's just a slight bit more, but I remember it as a young child, and what an honor it is to have this still here and be able to attend and see how clean and nice and preserved it is. As everyone said, it's a gem, it's an attraction, and I'm so supportive of this. It's something that brings people to Auburn and makes people happy. So thank you for all your hard work, all of you. So with that, do I have a motion?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, if I could, I would make a motion that by resolution, we add 985 Lincoln Way, the Auburn State Theater, to the city's register of historic buildings and places.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Spokely,
Yes.
Berlant,
Aye.
Dowden Calvillo,
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
And Mayor Amara.
Yes, thank you very much. That passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item number 10, the 22-23 sewer assessment to be placed on the Placer County tax roll. And this is a public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor Amara, members of the council. For the record, I'm Nathan Bagwell. I serve as your Administrative Services Director. The purpose of this public hearing, this is an annual process that we do to levy the sewer charges and request the authorization to place the charges on the levy for the Placer County tax roll. Just kind of at a high level, the city assessed approximately 4,800 various assessments, and it brings in about $6.2 million to the sewer fund that we use then for capital to make improvements. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about this process.
Have any questions? Okay, Councilwoman Dowd Cavillo.
Yes, so I do note we haven't raised our rates in how many years?
I believe the last time we did something like that, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago. Let's see. Yes, there was a rate analysis done about 5 years ago. It looks like 18, 19. And one of the reasons why we haven't done this, one is we have a large balance right now. So we are actively trying to use that balance. We're doing some pretty large projects in the sewer fund. Additionally, we are instituting a asset management program, basically doing inventory. So as we get forward and going with the master plan, then you identify all the things that you need to do with that master plan. And that really is the time to look at your rates and fees so that you can go ahead and capture all that work you want to do.
And so I wanted to point that out because I think that's certainly in the positive that we haven't had to raise our rates. We do have sufficient funds to perform the duties right now. But, and I also wanted to just say that, I appreciate that we do have that asset management program, on the horizon here, because I do have a sneaky suspicion, and I actually know I've spoken with our city manager about this, that we do have some residents that are enjoying sewer services, but perhaps unbeknownst to them are not paying. So because of some connections, yes, connections that have happened over the years, 50 years ago, 40 years ago, what have you. But that asset management process will identify that as well. So we can make sure that everyone is paying for the services that they are.
Before that happens, though, we could just take a simple Excel spreadsheet and put the addresses that we're billing and the addresses in the city and make sure there's not any differences though, right?
We do have the ability to add people.
Okay,
within
I'm
the
just
city
saying,
limits,
I'm just
yeah.
we wouldn't, we
For sure.
have the capability of knowing today if there's people that are kind of missing from the list, if we put.
Yeah,
it
I'd
in
have
the
to get
system.
into the reasons why somebody's getting free sewer.
I'm not getting into that. I'm just saying if
I
we wanted
would.
to make sure that there was no
Yeah.
errors like that,
Yeah.
we could go figure that out right now.
But there are.
You don't have to wait for the asset.
No, but that will really provide a concrete, okay, because there are places like, my neighborhood where we're on septic tank, right? So all the addresses in my entire neighborhood are, not going to be on there. And there are other places in the city as well.
But we know most of those.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
we
have them
might,
identified.
but in any event, I think that this asset management, program really is going to shed some important light. I mean, and there's not going to be any disputes. I mean, it's the fact of the matter is, so, addresses change, people's names, whatever. This is going to show it and, in any event. So,
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
Okay, Councilman Berlin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Nathan, one of the reasons, as I understand it, that we built up the fund balance in the sewer fund was specifically for the regional connection to Lincoln. Should we be forced to go down that road? Where are we with that process? I'm assuming that, because the plant operates at an award-winning level, that the push to go to regionalization is there. But I just want to talk about the finances and ask that question of, are we still putting money aside or holding any money specifically to potentially connect to the regional system?
I'll take a shot at that. The answer is no. We are not holding any funds towards the regional amount. The city did pay towards part of it, but that's already happened. So essentially, the fund balance that we have right now represents a number of things. Quite frankly, quite a bit of deferred maintenance that needs to go. All of the money is within the operational reserve of everything. I really don't think we have very much as far as like impact fee money really to speak of. So the answer to your question is no. It's not going to the regional facility. And last year took a look at it and actually talked with some of the people at the county. If we ever wanted to get into that, it would be a big leap for what they're doing. We have funds that are put towards capacity in the line, but not necessarily the facility. And
Yeah, that's the
that-
pipeline. I think
yeah.
that we invested in the pipeline
Yep.
upsizing.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that had paid that all off and that there weren't any other charges for the potential, should we need to connect to it. So,
Yeah,
okay,
specifically, the question I asked is, do we owe anything?
yeah.
Yeah.
Because it became quite an issue between Lincoln and Placer
Placer.
County. And I talked to the person at the county and they said, we're good. So
Great.
I'm
Well,
going with
I
that.
appreciate hearing that. And I know that a lot of councils before us and including many of us were here when we've had to raise the rates. And so it's nice that we, I think, included what was, I believe, a 5-year rate adjustment. And now we're able to continue again this year, not raising it, and that we are properly, for next year, and that we're, collecting the correct amount of dollars and not just continuously raising it to raise it. So thank you, Nathan. Appreciate it.
Councilman Spokely?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Appreciate it. And I'll yell here so everybody can hopefully hear me. So
Yes.
the question I've got is related to the numerous pump station upgrades that we've seen throughout the city limits. The rates are assessed based on whether you're using one pump station, two pump stations, and they kind of incrementally go up the more dependency you have on pump stations. Based on the increased costs we've seen in bids for recent work for those improvements, are we comfortable with the rates as presented based on those increased costs that we're seeing? Nathan?
Can you speak, just say your question one more time,
No,
please?
No, I've got it.
John's got it.
Oh, I don't think, okay.
Yeah, no, I've got this. The capital improvement program includes a number of things. The SCADA system, and includes the council at the last meeting awarded one lift station. We've also got another lift station that we're going with. Right now, we're very comfortable. The overall fund balance in our operation and maintenance, the O&M side of it, we feel very comfortable. But I think Councilmember Spokely brings up a true reality. Before we are going to move forward with doing another rate study, we're going to implement aspects of the asset management program to figure out what we need to do. Hopefully the economy will settle down a little bit as far as inflation goes. But we're going to use probably the next year to 18 months doing the asset management implementation, inspecting, coming up with projects, folding all those things in, and then we will go back. I will tell you that as we hold back a little bit, we will, the idea of just doing a rate increase for the sake of a rate increase, first off, we as a city need to do, you have to hire an independent company to come in and actually see how your rates are being charged. And before we can do that, I think we need to get a handle on the overall asset management program. So bottom line, right now, we think that our overall fund balance in our O&M is just fine. But we will be looking at a lot of things, and it'll probably be coming back to the council, if not next year, the year after that.
Thank you.
John, thank you for that. Can you guys hear me any better than before?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. So the only other comment I wanted to make, if I may, Madam Mayor, Daniel mentioned the regional capacity that the city purchased back when he and I both, I think, first got on the council. That was a drop in the bucket for the regional solution. The city has paid that bill. And if we need to, God forbid, ever have to go regional and decommission our wastewater treatment plant, the cost will be astronomical to buy the capacity for treatment at the regional plant because it's a limited commodity down there, and the cost to increase the capacity for that regional plant are significant. So luckily, as Daniel mentioned, we have an award-winning plant, and let's just keep our fingers crossed that we keep it that way. It's doing great for the city of Auburn. We're doing everything we're supposed to do from a a regional board standpoint, and we don't want to have to go that regional route, even though we bought capacity and upsizing a pipe. So technically we could if we needed to. That cost that we paid didn't buy any treatment capacity at the plant. And that's where the big dollars come into play for our ratepayers. So I hope we're not going to have to go there ever. And let's continue to operate this award-winning plant as Daniel mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say, Councilman Spokely, we'd hear you better if you turn on your, show your face. No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. We could read your lips. No, thank you very much for your input. Appreciate it. Yes.
So I have a comment that to be perfectly honest, I don't know. I think it's a little early to give ourselves prop for not raising the rate because I just feel like we haven't really figured out what our costs are. Deferred maintenance to me means we haven't been doing the maintenance that we should be doing for many years. And so we don't necessarily know what that's going to cost us. And it probably was a lot cheaper to do 10 years ago than it is today. And so I'm concerned that that bank account might not go as far as we'd like it to when it comes to maintenance. So you talk about, we need to spend our account. And so we're not just spending it to spend it. We're spending it on things we probably should have done years ago and catching up on a lot of the deferred maintenance that account was supposed to be used for. And so I'm eager to find out once we do the upgrades that really need to be done, where we end up with the upgrades that are left and really what we need to be charging for the upkeep of the system once we have a true assessment of what it is. And so I just don't want everyone to think that we're in a great spot right now and that we won't there's not going to probably be a need to increase rates in the future. It's just we don't know enough to know if we need to increase the rates right now. And we're going to do an assessment to figure that out. And once we do, there could be some significant costs that are associated with what's left over after we spend that bank account on what it should have been spent on. So I just wanted to throw that out there that it's not like we're in a great spot and we don't need to raise rates. It's that we just don't know what we need those rates to be at this point. So correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, we
Am I
need
good?
information.
Okay.
Absolutely. yeah.
Councilman Berlant?
Well, I guess that I asked the question, when we did the rate analysis and we looked at what was needed, why were these items that she's mentioning not brought up? Or are we where we need to be right now? Because it was inferred that we have deferred maintenance that we're choosing not to spend. And so I guess I would ask that if that's the case, why aren't they in our plan to spend, and why don't we know that? Because I guess I would argue that we do know that, at least based on the efforts that the Public Works team put together.
So the last time there was a rate study was 5 years ago, and and those items were put in there at a certain level. I think that the reality is that as we move forward, we do have a pretty healthy O&M fund balance right now. We are doing the asset management program. Before you consider any type of adjustment to it, the rate study is very much a going forward rate. You typically consider it every 5 years. And one of the things that we're doing as part of the asset management system is, number one, we are going to look at what the demand is going forward. We are looking at some of the deferred maintenance. The city had identified about $650,000 a year that was going towards some of the capital maintenance. Some of that hasn't been spent. We are moving forward. In just a few minutes, Nathan's going to talk about the city budget, and part of that involves the capital improvement program. As we move forward with the asset management, that's the analysis, because that gets into a couple of things. It either addresses the ongoing maintenance, and right now, I will tell you, to try and do a rate analysis right now, given where inflation and the economy is on various things, would probably be an impossible task. Because I can tell you for years of doing this, you want to do the rate analysis every 5 years, and you want to leave it onto that schedule. But trying to guess where a lot of the construction costs and things are going right now is practically impossible.
No, I appreciate that. And again, I'm not naive enough to not think that when we need to continue to make upgrades to our various pump stations, the other infrastructure, it's going to cost a significant amount of money. And again, I think as Councilmember Stokely, hoped, I guess I would turn in and actually say that needs to be continued direction, that staff work very hard to keep that award-winning plant so that we never have to be forced to go through the regionalization. I just wanted to verify, because when we passed the last rate increase, I was under the impression we spent a significant amount of time, and specifically staff did, to make sure that any maintenance costs that were needed on the system and in the infrastructure, that we were identifying it. So I wasn't aware that we kicked anything down the road to not make improvements in the last study. So thank you.
Unquestionably, the wastewater treatment facility is our number one asset. If you're going to look at the shiniest objects we have, that's it. Probably the biggest need that we really need to look at will be in our collection system. There are a number of things that we are, as we move into the overall asset management program, our number one focus will be on the collection system. We are looking at all of the lift stations, which some of them are a little bit older. We are getting on a progression for that. Like I said, we're going to, there are some funds that have been in the O&M that over the past couple of years haven't necessarily been expended. We're going to do that. And that's why we have the capital improvement program. But one of the, I will share with you my reticence on moving forward with doing a rate study or anything is predicated on getting the asset management system going, because I think it's going to identify the priorities of the things that we need to do as far as transparency for all of our customers. As we look at the things that we want to do, we're going to need to point to those types of things. So anyway, tonight's recommendation is just move forward with this on the tax roll, and then we'll be bringing back quite a bit of information over time.
Okay, before I open it to the public, I want to sum it up then. I like the progression. I like that we're going to use our asset management system and identify our priorities and go forward in a systematic approach. So with that being said, I'll open it to the public for any comments or questions. State your name and address, please. Just joking.
Certainly
And your
will.
terms that you served on the city council, please.
Cheryl Mackey, 1825 Arroyo Drive, newly paved Arroyo Drive, after I got off the city council. Good evening, council members, mayor, staff. I just want to kind of allay some of Rachel's, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Harris's fears about the deferred maintenance. Along with the regional board's recommendations when we get a permit renewed, it's just not the effluent going into the Auburn Ravine that they are managing. They're making sure that our wastewater treatment plant is state of the art, because there's so many failing systems in the state of California. One of their main goals is to make sure that we have a plan, and they always look at that plan. So when we renewed the rates and increased the rates a few years ago, we always make sure that that plan is qualified with the regional board. So I have no concerns about any deferred maintenance. It is an award-winning plant. There's no doubt about it. Regional board doesn't hand out that award. They hand out our permit, and they're always very happy to do it, because 25 years ago, Kathy and I sat on this board and that plant was failing. And we've gone through a lot of hoops to get it to where it is today, and I'm very proud of it. And I don't think you have to be concerned about
And I want to correct myself. I was not in any way referring to the plant itself. I think the plant is excellent. I
Okay.
know about all the awards. That's why I've been working with the plant on an extra project
Mhm.
to deal with the sludge. I think that everyone does great on the plant. I love the upgrades. It's amazing.
Yeah.
The collection system is a spot where there's been some deferred maintenance.
Sure.
We should have had a SCADA system a long time ago. We haven't scoped out our pipes to see what's has roots in it and what doesn't, and all that's where I think that we
Right.
could really make sure that we're spending our money on that system, because we get a lot of complaints about that system in lots of different places. And if
Right.
there's going to be an issue that's addressed that we need to address with the public, it's going to be around that. So that's where I just
Right.
think that we need to make sure we're putting our effort. And if we have a fund, we need to make sure every year we're spending our money to make sure we're maintaining
Sure.
that piece too.
Very common in historic cities.
Yep.
Gold Rush era cities to have
Yep.
collection problems and pipe problems. and-
There's just some up to technology that's been available for us to use for a while that we haven't been putting in place that could help
Mhm.
us to figure out which ones we need to be focusing our time and energy on, and how to better maintain it in a more efficient way. And so I
God
just
bless
think that-
technology.
Yep. So that's what I was referring to. I was not in any way
Okay.
referring to the plant.
I
So
just got a little.
no. I think the plan is wonderful.
you.
I just know that there's been some issues with the collection system.
Thank you, both of you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion?
Sure, I will by resolution authorize the odd word. Oh, I guess we're still levying the fee, just not raising it, but authorizing the levying of the sewer service charges for fiscal year 22-23 to be placed on the County of Placer tax roll.
I'll second.
Roll call vote?
Councilmember Spokely,
Yes.
Berlant,
Aye.
Dowden Calvillo,
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
And Mayor Amara.
Yes, thank you, that passes. Number 11, the Flock Safety Service Agreement.
Can we work on that together?
Good evening, Tucker Huey, Lieutenant with the Auburn Police Department. Here before you tonight, seeking a resolution to approve a service contract with Flock Safety for some additional ALPR cameras. So kind of initially, I'll run you through basically. Oh, am I too low? There we go. Okay, so I'll run you through a kind of a brief synopsis of what actually ALPRs are, why we need them, where we're at in our current ALPR system, and then basically why we need some additionals. I will add that the resolution will be contingent on the completion of the legal review of the contract with the city attorney who's currently working on it. So why do we need ALPRs? So 7 out of 10 crimes involve a vehicle, which is a stat that is floating around out there. That doesn't necessarily mean it's an instrumentality of the crime itself. It just means whether the vehicle was used in the commission of a crime or if it was used in transportation. So anecdotally, for our rural community, it's probably a little bit higher than that. Most of our crimes are going to involve a vehicle simply because where we are geographically. 80% of crime nationwide goes unsolved because there's lack of actionable evidence. So for Auburn, we're beating that by a little bit. We're at about 73%. Overall crime is about 62%. So certainly we would love to do better, and we think this is the tool that can help us, but we're beating a lot of our counterparts. Kind of why the arrest data matters. For every arrest we make, we're solving one crime, we're preventing other crimes from occurring, and typically that one crime will help us solve other crimes. So it's a widespread tool. It's not a one-for-one. And the technology simply allows us to be more effective. It takes less staff time, we're more efficient, and we're able to close out more cases. So ALPR, as I mentioned, is an automatic license plate reader. Essentially, it's a camera that gets run through a software. The software deciphers what the actual license plate is and then pushes that back out to a terminal. All the camera and the software are doing is looking for a match between what it sees and a list that's uploaded. It's not the DMV record that contains all the personal identifying information. technology. If anyone's familiar with the ones we have now, the big gray boxes with the blinking blue lights. So they're now about this big with the solar panel. So the technology has come a long, long ways. It gathers objective, unbiased facts. So that photo is a depiction of what a detection actually looks like through flock. It's simply a car with a license plate. So a big part of it is, what is an ALPR system not? So it's not facial recognition software. It's not used for immigration enforcement. It's not used for traffic enforcement. It's end-to-end, it's encrypted through AWS government cloud, so it's secure. And again, there's no personal identifying information contained in the system, and it's not connected to any registration data or third-party databases, which is actually in contradiction to our older kind of legacy system that does use third-party data. It's retained for 30 days, and it takes essentially all the bias out of it. It's simply a computer system. So it's proactive. We receive real-time alerts when a stolen or wanted vehicle enters our city. We use it as an investigative tool to help us close out crimes that have already occurred, and it serves as a deterrent. So the increase in technology, LA Sheriff's Department did a study, and they found the new system to be about 30% more effective and more accurate in obtaining reads. So currently we have 5 ALPR cameras. We have one at Auburn, Folsom, and Indian Hill. We have one at Nevada Street and Fulweiler. We have one in Old Town, one in downtown, and one at the airport. And we've had great success with it. So it was used for the mass stabbing at the library. We were able to capture the suspect vehicle on that. It was used for the homicide that occurred outside of the 160 Club. We've gotten several leads out of the rash of catalytic converter thefts that have been occurring everywhere in our region, and we've recovered multiple stolen vehicles with it. So the big technological improvements that really come to play. So our legacy system needed to be plugged into an electrical grid, and that severely reduced the ability to place it strategically and where we wanted. The new offering is solar powered, and it uses a cellular connection, so we can place them basically wherever it's physically possible. So it really opens up our ability to be more strategic with our placement. Has better field of view. So whereas the legacy system is capturing one lane of traffic, the new systems can capture multiple lanes of traffic. So, we can be doubling or tripling the volume that one camera at one location is seeing. As I mentioned earlier, it's a little bit more accurate on reading the plates. And then one of the big improvements is, rather than reading the license plate, running that through information through a third party to decipher what kind of car it is, it's using AI to actually measure the vehicle and making an assumption on what kind of vehicle it is. And so if you were to have a car that didn't have license plates, on the legacy system, you're never going to be able to find that car again. On the new system, if you know that it's a white Honda, you can search it by a white Honda, whether it has a license plate on it or not, or whether the license plate that is on it actually belongs to that vehicle or not. So that in and of itself is a huge improvement. One of the other big things is this system is actually marketed to HOAs and businesses as well. That camera doesn't tie in. So if a private party were to purchase a camera, that doesn't tie into our criminal database. It doesn't tell you necessarily it's a stolen vehicle for the owner, but they have the ability to tie into our system. It does notify us. Like, kind of ironic that the theater was on tonight, because one of the ideas kind of floating around is we want to bring the vendor out and invite our business partners and our HOA partners and actually put this before them, because that allows us to use privately funded cameras to build our system, as well as give some of the businesses and neighborhoods additional security. So phase 1 for our plan is we want to work towards creating a geofence around the city. So essentially, we would like to start working towards, you can't enter the city of Auburn without your license plate being scanned. takes about 20 cameras. We have our new CAD RMS system, which gives us the ability to keep much better records of how the system is being used and its successes, and really kind of dig into the statistics of how efficient these truly are for us, which goes hand in hand with the police department's strategic goal of using technology bolstered and data-driven policing, and also ties in with the city of Auburn strategic goal of providing a safe community, as well as modernizing some of our systems. And then obviously, as I mentioned briefly, it also helps us work with our community and business partners to collaborate. The 6 new proposed locations we have is Auburn Folsom at Lantern View, Highway 49 south of Marguerite Mine Road, Highway 49 north of Lincoln Way, El Dorado Street west of Lincoln Way south of Russell Road, Auburn Road west of Nation Drive. So these were strategically picked. It's an entry into the city, and the distance allows staff time to get the alert and still be able to respond to the area and try to locate the vehicle. With some of our cameras, the legacy cameras with the placement, we would get a detection and we would have to inform either the highway patrol or the sheriff's department, because by the time we could respond to where the vehicle was, it was gone. And then, so phase 2, what we'd like to do is really, like I said, dive into the data, analyze how efficient it is, if we have any tweaks we need to make for improvement, and then complete 100% geofence for the Auburn Airport. That one's obviously pretty easy. There's not a whole lot of ways in and out, so we can completely get a geofence around there and then continue working towards the geofence for the remainder of the city. The fiscal impact, so it's $2,900 in installation costs. Each camera is $2,500 for annually. So for the 6 proposed, it'll be $15,000. And this program cost will be absorbed in the current police department base budget. At this point, I'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you for that thorough report. Are there any questions from the city council? Councilman Berlant.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Lieutenant, for your presentation. I have a couple questions, kind of comparing it to the LPR that we purchased in 2018. Just looking at the price difference, if my notes are correct, we spent over $13,000 per pod for the 2018 version. Am I misunderstanding why there's a significant price difference, or is it just better technology and more effective and efficient back to technology?
Yes, it's the technology availability. Obviously, everything's come a long ways, and it's a subscription-based pricing model rather than an outright purchase.
And in the subscription you had referenced that this version uses cell phones. So is that connection, the connectivity as part of the subscription as well, or is that an additional cost?
It's included.
It's included. Wow. If I'm not mistaken, in 2018, when we bought the pods, we also outfitted a patrol vehicle. What happens to that LPR on the vehicle? Will you eventually add them to vehicles? Will the existing one stay there? What happens to the vehicle?
Flock does have an integration solution for a mobile license plate reader. That's not on our plan at this point in time. The legacy system will continue to operate, and we'll continue to use the mobile license plate for that purpose.
Okay, well, that was one of my other questions. So we're not getting rid of the pods. They will stay in place. We will have the Flock system and the pods.
Yes, we will have both systems operating concurrently.
Okay, well, that's all my questions. Thank you, Lieutenant.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
Thank you. Just so we can say it out in front of everyone, these aren't going to be used to give tickets or be used for any other purpose other than just identifying the vehicles for the reasons that you stated. They're not going to be used for other kinds of trying to track people down or any of those kinds of things that people may say about these kinds of cameras.
Absolutely not. So there will be no traffic enforcement whatsoever with these. Short of a vehicle being stolen, which is entered into a Department of Justice database, that list is then uploaded into the cloud-based software. And so when I say it's looking for a match, it's comparing that list against the list of stolen vehicles. So if it sees a plate that's on that vehicle, that's the only time we'll get a detection.
Or if there's like
Then
an
for
Amber
wanted
Alert or
vehicles, so-
something that comes up like that.
And so those and any crimes additionally, we actually have to manually upload into that system. So we have a need to be looking for this vehicle, and we ourselves are putting our name, which is completely audited, associated with that vehicle in that list.
Okay.
Anytime any officer or anyone with access to the system looks up a license plate to see if it's been detected, that's audited as well.
Okay, great.
So
I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah,
for
on the,
everybody.
in that regard, who has, who manages that? Make sure that, not just anyone can walk. I mean, are there specific officers that will have access to the list? Everybody.
All of our officers and all of our dispatch staff will have access to the system. And then as part of our policy, and we've been staying up on, we conduct routine audits of the access to the system, including the audit log of why the system was accessed or utilized.
But that information then is not given to anyone else. Then it's just for officers' information only.
Correct. And again, to really just drive the point home, the information in that system doesn't contain who owns the vehicle. It doesn't contain what they were doing in the vehicle. It's simply that a white Honda Civic with this license plate drove through that intersection. That's the only information that's in the system, unless it's on a hot list, which was entered.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
That's all I had.
Okay. Councilwoman Dowden, could we go?
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate your bringing this to us, Lieutenant. Thank you very much. Just a couple quick questions. Is it your intent to ultimately replace the old system with these newer cameras?
Yes. So the old cameras aren't going to last forever. The service life is probably 10 years,
Okay.
which we're coming up on. But
Okay.
there's no need to take them offline prematurely. As
Sure.
long as they're working, we're keeping them up. Once they're no longer functioning, we're switched completely to the flock system. And
So sort of as soon as, whenever they then malfunction or whatever, then you'll just replace it at that time with a newer
yes,
camera. Okay. And then phase two, when do you anticipate implementing phase two? Phase two is total geofencing of the city and the airport. So when, is that next year or what is the timeline?
probably no sooner than 2 years out, I would imagine. We really want to make sure that we get it right and are using data to properly lead us in the direction.
So then with regard to the airport, because I know that the users have expressed, a lot of concern with regards to security issues out there and there has been a call for cameras. I think there are some cameras there or there's one or.
Yes.
Yeah, but I know that they would absolutely want to see more of that. And so I don't know if there's a way to maybe expedite that there. I understand you want to make sure that they function properly. And so you're, this first phase, but I just know that that's a huge issue out there. And, they've talked about fencing and, that's not a very popular item at all, but geofencing, this electronic with the cameras, I think certainly is something that is of interest to them. And so I'd like to be able to see that happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, as to privately funding cameras, we're really hoping that we get a lot of community support and interest. And so we'll be pushing heavily for that and obviously working with our partners because we can use their privately funded cameras to grow our network and kind of be the puppet master behind getting everything placed to be the most efficient.
So I'm just thinking that's a good 5AC meeting topic maybe is to have the lieutenant come out and talk about that. And then, with the users that might have their own cameras and how they can work with this new system and what have you. But obviously we know that's a concern. And so I'm glad to see that we're at least doing it here and I'd like to see it there sooner rather than later. So, and let's put it on 5AC. I'm getting the thumbs up. Thank you.
Councilman Spokely?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm turning my camera on, although I do
No,
have my
I was teasing.
I have my Oregon duck hat on. So anyway, so when we went through this process, Lieutenant, thank you again for your report. Very, very well done. When we went through this back in 2018, we had kind of broad support from our business districts to kind of help. I think we had grant funding, although I didn't get a chance to look that up. been busy for the last couple of days, but this program, albeit the costs are pretty significantly cheaper, as Councilman Berlant mentioned, than what we were seeing before. Do we have any interest from our business districts to kind of expand the program that we started back in 2018?
I'm not sure if I entirely understand your question. I'll kind of take a shot at it. So we haven't reached out to them for originally, I believe some of the camera pods were purchased through business associations. Those didn't include license plate readers. So the license plate readers would be kind of a new push to get that to privatized.
And I was just curious if there was an equal level of interest from the businesses. We went through that period where we felt the need to kind of develop this camera program and LPR program to try to give you guys at the police department more tools to combat some of the crimes that were going on in town. So something to think about. Might be a good idea to see what their level of interest may be. The other question I had, and I've had a couple of conversations with the chief over the years, this program kind of came on with a big push, and then we kind of lost track of it, I believe, at the city. And while you guys might have been actively using it, and there might be really good reasons why you don't want to be more public about your findings and reports from the program, the idea of getting that communication out. I mean, for me, if in my mind, if I'm a criminal and I'm coming to Auburn to commit crimes, and I know that they got cameras all over the place and LPRs, I might decide to go somewhere else. What is there any sort of public outreach program that you guys are contemplating to go along with this new engagement with the LPRs and expansion of this program?
Yes. So actually this times up perfectly with the implementation of our new CAD RMS. So that was one of the historical limitations, was just the ability to accurately track and then recall specific incidents. And so with our new CAD RMS system, it's set up so that every time this is used to solve a crime, we can capture that. And so we can actually run a comprehensive report that will show us what types of crimes and the amount that is actually being utilized successfully. Developing a report, absolutely no, this is not anything we're trying to keep secret. To your point, the more we can put it in front of the public to where the criminal element knows that this technology is being used, it's going to become more effective as a deterrent. Obviously, a crime deterrent trumps every other crime enforcement.
Yeah, and I think perfect comment, final comment, at least for my remarks. You mentioned that these cameras are kind of a force multiplier. Those are my words, not yours. But getting a criminal off the streets and preventing them from committing more crimes in our community is, in my opinion, money well spent. So thank you again for your presentation. I do appreciate it, and I'm in support of this program.
Thank you.
Before I call the chief, I'm gonna, Councilman Berlant.
Yeah, I was just going to echo, one of the reasons in 2018 we went with the cameras and the pods was because the business districts were really pushing on us because of a rash of break-ins. And so especially at the fraction of the cost that this new system would cost them, I definitely would second Councilmember Spokley's comment about working with the business districts, with the chamber, with any of our other organizations who might be interested in helping add that extra level of protection or safety net. So thank you.
And from my perspective, just to kind of sum it up, I think it's a phenomenal program. Thank you for doing this and for improving it. If it prevents, solves, and helps keep our town safer, I'm very much in favor and supportive of this. So, but Chief Canan had his hand up, or did it go down?
I did. Thank you, Mayor Mara. So Ryan Canan, Chief of Police for the record. So I just happen to be in Austin, Texas, because my son is graduating from the Electrical Lineman Academy on Wednesday. So I'm here on Zoom. But I just want to commend Lieutenant Huey for his presentation. He has been the one really running with this program and staying abreast of all the different technology that's out there. He's done a lot of research. So really just want to highlight the work that he's done on there. But a lot of the discussion is with the businesses and how do we continue that outreach. And that's that part of phase 2, because what this program allows, and which previous technology didn't, was the ability for the community and private citizens and businesses to purchase this equipment and tie back into ours. So it's a huge advance in technology that certainly will continue to bolster our ability to keep the community safe and use technology. So again, I just want to highlight the work that Lieutenant Huey has been doing on this program. And I appreciate the support from the city council as we move forward on this.
Thank you. And I'll open it up to the public. We have one taker.
Hi, I'm Dean Prigmore. I don't live in the city of Auburn. I live in Meadow Vista. But the question might be, how integrated is this with the sheriff's department, or is it at all? Or do you exchange information, that kind of thing? Or should they be doing the same thing you're doing?
So presently, the sheriff's department is not implementing any type of automated license plate reader system. They use a little bit for their RADF, Regional Automotive Task Force team. Roseville Police Department is working towards, and they're nearing completion of 100% geofence and have had tremendous success with it. Rockland Police Department is in the process. I don't recall exactly where they're at to date. And then a lot of regional partners are all making the switch with us from the legacy system to Flock Safety. Flock Safety, I believe, is coming up on about 1,000 different municipalities they're working with.
Thank you. Anyone else? Do I have a motion from the city council?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'll move by resolution to approve the 24-month service agreement with Flock Safety to provide 6 additional automated license plate readers.
I'll second.
We can just add real quick too, as Lieutenant Huey mentioned, subject to legal review, so staff can complete their process before executing the agreement too. That's staff's recommendation.
So part of my motion will be subject to legal review.
Please. Thanks.
Did we have a second?
Second.
Matt did. Oh, okay. Spokely. Councilman Spokely. Okay, roll call.
Councilmember Spokely,
Yes.
Berlant,
Aye.
Dowden Calvillo,
Aye.
Riddell Harris. Aye. And Mayor Amar.
Yes, thank you very much. Now, if no one minds, I would like to take about a 5-minute break. We'll resume at 7:35. I guess if you mind, it's too bad.
I just go from my own experience with that stuff.
Why did she send that? That was the third, right? The 10th.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, it'll be, you know, yeah. So, you know, we'll be well. My sister.
I don't have it.
It's just, it's, you know, it's because, you know, it's like the same kind of.
Well, she did send it.
So it just like, part of me is like, but the wedding was. This is.
Yeah. We got these stickers stuck in your tab
Take some of that.
today.
To reconvene the meeting, please? I did. Can't you hear it? There, thank you. Thank you. I guess I need lessons on that. Okay, so, well, I do item 12, fiscal years 2022, 23, 23, 24, budget development update. Nathan.
Good evening, and thank you very much, Mayor Mara, members of the council. For the record, again, I'm Nathan Bagwell. I serve as your Administrative Services Director. And what we're going to be doing tonight is we're going to be giving you an update on the development of the budget process. And tonight we're going to key in on some things. We're not going to spend a lot of time on some items you've already heard before. We're really going to dive in deeply on some things that council's been asking about and wanting some clarification, such as fund balance, unassigned fund balance reserves, how that looks going forward. We're going to take a historical look at fund balances and unassigned reserves. We're going to take a look also deeply at FTEs, full-time equivalents, staffing from a historical perspective over a 10-year horizon. And we're also going to discuss one or two really small changes that were made to our assumptions in the model. And we are going to land the plane with the capital improvement update. So let's dive in. You've seen this screen before. This is really an overview at 20,000 feet. It's a biennial budget, but what's really happening by function is we're adopting, next council meeting, we'll be adopting a one-year budget with a second projected year. What this translates to is 33.8 million in total general fund expenditures over the course of the biennial budget. That does account for 4.3 million in pension costs over the 2 budget years. That does account for debt service as well as our normal pension costs and unfunded accrued liability. And there's also the proposed use of general fund balance surpluses that have been accrued over the last couple of fiscal years for one-time projects, roughly $2 million. So this looks a little different than the last time you saw it. And the big difference is we've added $20,000 into discretionary support. And what that translates to is $10,000 for both each for the Auburn State Theater as well as the Auburn Symphony. So previously we were projecting a budget deficit of 175,000 and we are now 195. That's the difference. We did not make that same assumption for the second year of the budget. It will be coming back next year. And we're keeping an eye on a lot of economic factors right now. You've been hearing probably a lot about inflation, potential for stagflation, rising energy costs and the such. We're keeping a very close eye on that. So all that said, this is a very conservatively drawn up budget. It is an aggressive budget, but our assumptions are conservative. So we are not getting too deep into what we anticipate things to grow, as we are unsure of that as we go forward. What this is you've seen this as well. This is an explanation of how over the course of the last 3 years, we ended up with a $1.8 million operational surplus. And just to give this context, what happens is when we adopt a budget, we're really projecting out the rest of the fiscal year. So for example, we came into this fiscal year anticipating $500,000 of operational deficit. Well, what happens is you go through the year, revenues come in higher. We've done quite well with sales tax. COVID impacts have not been as impactful as originally anticipated. So the year closes, we have our audit about 3 or 4 months. That concludes after the fiscal year. And the information comes in from our revenue consultants. And by the end of the year, we're ready to come back and take a real close look at it and give you what we call our mid-year update. In that time, the year closes and we find out at that point that, oh, actually the year came in quite a bit better than originally adopted in the budget a full year and a half previous. So for example, in the current fiscal year, we anticipated $500,000 deficit. We're projecting now over $600,000 surplus. That's the genesis of that. And that's how that occurs. So that's been occurring for the last couple of years to the tune of about $1.7 million in additional general fund balance over the previous 3 years. So we talk about fund balance. What I'm referring specifically to is cash, okay? Cash at the end of the day. The ending fund balance on the right is our cash at the end of the day, at the end of the fiscal year. Obviously for 21-22, that's a projected number. And for the following 2 years, again, that is a projected number. These cash representations do not reflect the use of any one-time fund balances. This is just to exhibit and show you where we've been in terms of what we start the year at and what we end the year at. And as you can see over the last decade, it's progressively been building up as we start in the year with. Now, in that cash, we have reserves. So essentially, we have 3 kinds of reserves. We have our rainy day fund, which is $2.7 million of economic uncertainty. We have a prepaid insurance, and we have a pension stability. And then lastly, what's left over essentially is our unassigned fund balance. So basically you have your cash and you say, hey, we're going to hold on to roughly $4 million on an annual basis for a rainy day and for something to change in our pension, just in case. As you can see, a couple years ago, actually this year, we reduced our pension liability fund because we issued the pension obligation bond. That was a very strategic and great move that locked in our interest rate. It expedited our principal payments and has positioned the city very well from a cash standpoint. The unassigned fund balance, I'd like to key in on that for a second here. If you look back at 12-13, so roughly 10 years ago, we were basically, we said at the end of the day, we've got $680,000 of just essentially flexibility, what you want to do with it. As you can see, that's grown quite a bit over the years. In 1920, council said, hey, we want to set some money aside for pension, instability. So that checked that down to 300,000. Well, that's even with that money set aside for pension stability, that number has continued to grow. As you see, we did reduce our pension liability to $1 million. However, even with the use of fund balance to do the one-time projects for the storm drain, you can see the asterisk numbers there at the bottom right. We're still looking at having over $1 million of unassigned flexible fund balance at the end of this proposed 2-year budget. And this is the same information in a different way. The blue is the beginning fund balance, orange is ending, and I guess we'll call that a light red. It looked gray on my screen earlier, is the unassigned fund balance. So the unassigned fund balance, again, is just that cash that we don't have anything really reserved for. As you see, it goes up, kind of peaks. And in 1920, we say, okay, we want to set some money aside for a pension. Well, even after doing that, we've gone ahead and as you can see, the beginning fund balance has been lower than the ending fund balance all the way up until the 2 projected years of our balance of our budget, with which we are proposing to spend some of that down because we've been experiencing surpluses. So to look at this another way, fund balances as a percentage of expenditures. I know this is a hot topic. There's the Government Finance Officers Association recommends a minimum of 25%. And what this means is, this is, say, the general fund, your expenditures, if they're $10 million, this is what your fund balance is at the end of the day compared to that. So if you're projected to have 10 million in expenses, you have 40% left over, you've got $4 million. So what I want to point out about this, as you can see, we've been in the 30% all the way up to 60, down to 50, into the 40s, mid 40s. That 41% over the next 2 years doesn't factor any use of fund balance for one-time projects, but this does. This is what it would look like if we go forward and use those funds for one-time projects. We would still be at 34 and 30% over the next 2 fiscal years. And remember, this is cash. This is not unassigned reserves. So we have this cash that even within those unassigned reserves, if something were to change, council always has the discretion to dip into them, make them larger as you direct. What those one-time expenses are proposed to be for the general fund, 1.4 million of it is for a storm drain project. And I want to talk about that for a second because the staff is actively working on ways with which to mitigate the impact to the general fund. However, second to that, we know that we have the money to do it. So we are actively working and exploring ways to use more restricted funding, completely legal with a nexus to it and all that good stuff. But there it is in case that doesn't come to fruition, which we have optimism that it will. But we want to just be transparent and tell you that the funds are there and we will be pursuing that as we go forward. Some capital for the 3 fire stations. We've talked about deferred maintenance and a fire truck lease over the next 2 years, dipping into reserves. So just to circle back, this is our general fund forecast again, now that we've had a little bit of context on how we've done with our revenues versus our expenses and our surplus deficits, and how we can start a year with one assumption and end a year with a completely another, just based on factors that are really, really difficult to ascertain, particularly with COVID, either impacting or not impacting things in ways that are unusual. And what I'll share with you is, our conversations recently with HDL, our revenue consultant, Andy Heath, our financial consultant, and I have had long discussions about the econometric effects of gas prices. And what we're finding is that Auburn is unique in the way that even when the economy isn't doing as well, we still do really well on gas sales. Our location is outstanding, and we have a unique arrangement right now. The way that we're set up, we basically have 300 gas stations that all pay into Auburn. Granted, that's not a forever thing, but through the horizon of the next 15 years, we're well positioned. No one's recession proof, but this does give us a level of comfort. We're doing well even when the economy isn't. We're doing better than the economy in a lot of ways, which is interesting and great, but it does not give us a false sense of confidence. We continue to monitor this very closely. So just to touch on our enterprise funds, as you've seen the CIP, there's a lot of projects in there, $37 million over the course of 5 years. So the airport balance, the airport fund, these enterprise funds, the cash in these funds are really for capital and maintenance as far as operations. So in the airport fund, with the projected capital in the coming year, we anticipate having $1.3 million at the end of the coming fiscal year. Looking forward, this enterprise, as well, both enterprise funds, but specifically first, the airport, even with the capital, it is still a self-sustaining enterprise fund. So even with the projects that are put in there, it's still going to sustain itself. The sewer fund, as we've discussed, has a higher balance. We are looking to aggressively spin that down with some key infrastructure projects. Even with the significant investment in the coming year, we anticipate about $5.7 million of fund balance in sewer in about a year from now. So the big takeaway, we are anticipating to have very healthy fund balances in our airport and sewer funds, our major enterprise funds. So to move on to staffing, I found this very interesting. As I was going back in the history of Auburn, which was great. Thank you very much for sending me into that, because I've learned so much about where we've come from. This is a graphic from 2015-16 budget document. And I found this rather interesting because in talking with Andy, we've had some great discussions about how the city responded to the Great Recession in 2008 and 9. This graphic really opened my eyes and showed in 2008, the city had 103.5 full-time equivalents. 2016, we had inched our way back up to 73, but even back then we were freezing positions. As I ascertain this information, as I digest this, what I've seen is that, in talking to Andy, we reorged 4 times during the Great Recession and just very active and did everything we could to get out in front of it. And what we've been doing ever since is very gradually restaffing. And what we're doing in this budget is really proposing to restaff in several key strategic areas, such as capital, airport, grants, things that we believe are fiscally important and operationally imperative. So I believe Mr. Berland was interested in seeing this one particularly. This is full-time equivalents by year. This one was actually a little bit tricky to get. I also found out that we changed our reporting methodology in our budgets about 7 years ago. We went to a performance-based budget, which is great. We love data-driven budgets. However, we were sprinkling our FTEs throughout, and we weren't just coming right out and saying, we have this many full-time equivalents. So what this is a marrying of when Andy did the budgets previously and what we're able to get from the annual financial reporting. So essentially 13 and 14, those were the adopted budget numbers. 15 through, I think, 19, those were the actual numbers that factor in any vacancies. 20 onward those are the bodies that we came forward and said, hey, this is who we anticipate if we were fully staffed.
And you're saying before this, it was in the hundreds. It was over
In 2008, we were over 100.
Okay.
Yeah. And in 2013 and 14, what I want to highlight is that doesn't mean we had that many people end up on the annual financial report. Those 72, 73, 73, that factors in any kind of vacancy, any kind of frozen thing that was going on. So the 83, 82, that's when essentially Andy came back on. And we've had a consistent budgeting reporting since, and I intend to keep it that way so that we have good comparable data that we can go back in history and compare ourselves to. But as you can see, we've gone 83, 83, 88, and 22. And the jump in 21 to 22, as we've talked about quite a bit, we added some much needed fire staff. In 2022, in the year 2022, we added a community risk reduction manager to help with the fire prevention, the greatest, highest priority here in the city. We added a human resources technician to help our transition into Tyler Technology and to get things shored up with our payroll and administrative services department. We added another firefighter because it's been absolutely horrible in labor shortages in the last year. It's just been brutal. So put that at 91, and we're proposing 4 new people this year. I'll get to those 4 folks in a moment. We've talked about them before, but I'll get into not just who they are, but how they're being paid for. This is another look at general fund balance over a 10-year horizon. And what I'm intending to do here is really sort of show you and lead you into the FTE kind of guide you through up how we got up where we are. So Remember, the blue is the expense line. You can see the expense line kind of trending up. And I'll go back as you can see the FTEs trending up. Natural correlation there. It's going to get more expensive as you have more people. These are ongoing costs. So we're very sensitive to that. We try to do so strategically and very carefully, ensure that we have the fiscal sustainability with each and every position that we bring on. So that brings us back to the forecast again. So we've talked about fund balance, cash versus unassigned reserves. We've talked about our full-time equivalent count. These are the actual staffing changes, but this isn't really what you asked to see. This is what you asked to see. The proposed staffing changes as it relates to what they cost and where they're being costed to. So specifically within this fiscal year, staff is proposing a new administrative assistant for economic development in airport. It's $82,000 that will be split between the airport and general fund. This supports a lot of key economic development, strategic imperatives, as well as airport support. Same as the reclassification of the economic development planning manager to director. It's $30,000. It's split evenly between airport and general fund. And want to reiterate too, that the airport, even with new FTEs, new costs, is still projected out on the horizon to be a self-sustaining enterprise fund.
Nathan, sorry,
The
are
ma-
these fully loaded costs or is this the annual?
These are fully loaded.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Good question. Thank you. The management analyst for the city manager's office, the one that is driven to be the strategic plan analyst and manager, as well as a support and administrator for grant funds, is 97,000 total. And that's split out 4 ways between the airport, sewer, transit, and general fund. The city engineer, 173,000 total. That is half of which is going to sewer. Largest chunk of capital lives there. 25% also to the airport and transit. And then lastly, the management analyst for the airport lives entirely in the airport fund. So just taking a step back, you've seen this, but it has changed slightly because we did add a little bit of money for the Auburn State Theater and the Symphony, 16.8 million in anticipated revenues in the coming fiscal year with 17 in expenditures. We do anticipate a budgetary deficit of 195,000. This is year 2 of our budget, our projected budget, the one that we will be coming back in a year and essentially doing this exercise again, but only for this year. We anticipate revenues to stay relatively flat. We're being pretty conservative there, 16.75 million. Expenditures are anticipated to be 16.778, so pretty close. A fairly small anticipated deficit of 30,000. This combines the two. So kind of to bring it full circle of 33.5 million total revenues, 33.8 total expenditures. This is just a reminder of the CalPERS costs that we are factoring into the overall budget, and for the benefit of folks who may not have been at the previous 2 budget workshops. The blue cost going across the bottom is just the average payroll costs that we incur for having folks in the California Public Employment Retirement System. The orange cost is what is called unfunded accrued liability. What happens is PERS generally will change their assumptions about their return on their investments, or they'll do an actuarial report that might change an equation, and essentially that cost gets passed on to cities. So what had happened was the cost was increasing exponentially over the years. As you see, a major shift happened in 21-22, this current fiscal year, where we had the opportunity to get involved with a pension obligation bond. That red line across the top is what we were anticipating to pay over even a 5-year horizon. Because we issued that pension obligation bond, that's the green bar. The difference between the red line and the green bar is pure savings for the city as a result of getting a significantly better interest rate and expediting principal payments. So that it evens out to about $500,000 annually in a couple of years from now.
Hey, Nathan,
Yes, sir.
can you go back to that slide? Can you? Yeah, thank you. So I just want to make sure we all understand, you know, when we were talking in 2018, 2019, 2020 with, and obviously the pension obligation bond was a fantastic thing and great that the city did it. That gave us a drop in 21, 22 of the orange bars, right? That's a question.
What was the question?
Can you guys not hear me?
No.
If you could just repeat the question at the end of your statement.
So the orange bars are growing in 2018, 19, 2019, 20, 20, and 21, and then they dip. That's because of the pension obligation bond that we let. Is that correct?
Okay, yeah. So you're talking about the orange bar and why that goes away?
Correct.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I'm having trouble here, but I don't hear very well anyway, so I apologize for that. Yes, that is why. And the reason why there's a couple orange bars even after we entered into the pension obligation bond is because CalPERS is typically 2 years is 2 years behind in their calculations. So it takes a little time for us to get that bill kind of fully ironed out. However, beyond what 2 years of the pension obligation bond issuance, as you can see, we do not anticipate any UAL. That's not to say there won't be. They could change their assumptions. They could come out with a new actuarial report where they assume everyone's going to live shorter lifespans, and that will increase the cost, or longer lifespans and the such. But yes, that is correct, Councilmember Spokley.
So you just said what I wanted to kind of make a point of. The orange bars, while we took care of them with the work that you and Andy and John did for the pension liability bond, those orange bars can come back once the market turns, once things soften, and CalPERS isn't making 20% on their investment portfolio. They will come after the city for those costs, I presume, correct?
Yeah, so it'll be interesting because this summer we're going to get their actuarial reports from basically as stated from 2 years back. So we're in an interesting spot because this summer we'll be looking at something where we might be potentially very close to fully funded, possibly super funded. To your point, Councilmember Spokley, and I think everyone's kind of nodding their heads. We're seeing what the stock market is doing now. We might not actually see anything about this stock market for 2 years until they've done their actuarial reports. So I think to your point, Mayor, it's so hard for me. He hasn't been mayor for almost a year. I'm so sorry, Councilmember Spokley. It behooves us to continue to keep some money set aside for that pension instability. We may not need $1 million as we go forward, but we certainly keeping it on the books for the next 2 years for sure.
Yeah, and if I might add on that, so Nathan's right. It's 2 years in arrears on looking at things. So really, probably the uptick in where PERS is at, as far as their return that they've been given, we've probably got about 2 years of absolute grace moving forward on this. And when we issued the pension obligation bond, we had kind of shot for where we thought we would end up to not be super funded. And I think we were wrong. I think there's a very good chance that we will be super funded, but that's not a bad thing. But I will tell you what we are absolutely going to do is, even though we may be super funded, we are still expensing all of that. And what the intent is that we will then drop that into some type of a fund that we have. So as we look at having some type of a pension liability type of reserve of some type, we will use the money from being super funded, and we will use that in the out years also. So there's really a couple of things in play. First is the pension obligation bonds significantly, dramatically reduce where that orange bar can go for us. Even if it comes back in the future, it will be a completely different story than we were 2 years ago. The second thing is that the amount of money that we do have from potentially being super funded, we will use that to smooth any of that out moving forward. So the city has the triple things. We have a small reserve that we've capped about $1 million. We've got any super funded surplus, but at the end of the day, we have that pension bond that was done that paid for all that money for many out years. What we essentially did is, as you look at this chart going way out, the goal was to cut the head off of what they called the 30-year curve. And we absolutely did that, as you look at the red line at the very top of that, that red line stays out there for a very long time for us. So, Nathan wants to talk about the readjustments and in some of the actuarials that they'll look forward. And what we did was we cut the head off of what will be probably the greatest liability, because we still have, all the things that they did with the Pension Reform Act really cut those things off. So it's a different world. And I think where we really stand to be at as far as the pension is in a wonderful place. In Auburn, the council deserves a lot of credit for saying we want to do these things. And like I said, I think we've cut the head off of probably the most dramatic part of it.
Well said. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Matt, Councilman Spokley?
Sorry,
Are you finished? I think you can proceed.
He's okay with you going forward?
I believe so.
Okay.
You still have to finish your presentation.
Okay. So I just wanted to highlight here the general fund discretionary support. The only difference here is that we've added $10,000 in the coming fiscal year for both the Auburn Symphony and the State Theater. We've discussed what activities our wonderful commissions and committees are doing in the upcoming year. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. But before I land the plane, I just kind of with the CIP, I just want to touch base back on some of the things we've talked about in the budget so far, that we have a 2-year, this is the first time in Auburn, a biennial budget spending plan. We do have in place an ARPA funding strategy that is fully compliant with the U.S. Treasury's requirements to have this fully programmed within 2 years and fully expended within 4. This budget does represent a historically significant investment in the community, the commissions, the critical infrastructure and foundational enhancements, such as updates to the city plan, municipal code, circulation report, infrastructure, technological infrastructure, records management, really modernizing the city. The budget was based and built on the pillars of the strategic plan as outlined by the city council. The proposed staffing enhancements are designed to generate revenue and increase efficiency of operations, with the goal of being just continuing and enhancing our fiscal sustainability. And at the end of the day, the city is projected to retain a strong cash position. We will continue to monitor the economy, and at any time we can delay or halt special projects as needed. We'll be coming back in 2 weeks for adoption on June 27th. And this is something we wanted to share with you as well. This was part of the agenda packet. And what this is something council requested. And so we've put together a list of the funding sources for the entire capital improvement plan. And what this is doing is this is quite literally tying everything throughout the budget document. All the dollars that are going to pay for these different projects are all outlined here by funding source. So, I mean, this is pretty detailed. This walked us out through 5 years. I was keying more. You can see there's kind of a cut between the first 2 years and the last 3. Obviously, the last 3 years are very projected. The first year is the one that we'll be adopting as part of our annual budget process. But you can really see we're getting into taking a very close look and tying everything in together so that we can really accomplish these things, deliver these projects. And this is the same CIP. However, this is looking at it of expenditures by program. And just because I like to point out my own mistakes, the airport program had about, I think, $100,000 added to it. That's the correct number in your CIP, but this is the one form that I didn't update. So I thought it would be great to go on public record and tell everybody I made that mistake. It'll be correct in the budget document, but I noticed this today when it was far too late for me to do anything about it. But yeah, it'll all tie in. But so what we're looking at here is expenditures by program. So you can really drill down on airport, sewer, transportation, and really get a sense of through the graph too. Okay, airport, sewer, and man, we are doing some big things in those 3 programs. And just because I got excited and was having fun with visuals that day, I made a nice little pie that shows the 5-year program. And again, it just kind of highlights what you already know, that the airport and the sewer are 2 really big players in this, and the transportation fund are carrying a lot of our capital plan for the next 5 years. But we have one, we have a plan, how we're going to get there from a funding standpoint. And we're excited and looking forward to getting to work. And I think I've spoken enough, so I'll be happy to answer any questions you'll have at this time.
Thank you, Nathan. And would we like to start with Councilman Berlant?
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. Nathan, I wanted to follow up to see if you guys had any opportunity since our last meeting to follow up on my question related to the ARPA funds and specifically related to the capital improvements that are being recommended here for Carnegie and understanding, does that trigger NEPA to use the ARPA dollars?
So yes, we followed up. We haven't found anything necessarily on the NEPA for it because the proposed use of the money has to do with maintenance. It doesn't have anything to do with expansion of it. From a maintenance standpoint, we haven't found any requirement for NEPA simply because we're using it for the maintenance aspects of it, fixing the roof, HVAC, accessibility types of things. But I will tell you that one of the things that as we're kind of diving in, the US Treasury, as far as their overall use of or explanation of that, gets a little gray in some areas. So I will tell you that notwithstanding, if we had to, we would probably, there is a workaround for us with the ARPA monies if we have to, just to, in so many ways, change the color of the money if we had to. So the short answer, yes. We haven't found anything that says that maintenance and repair would require NEPA. But in case we haven't found something with the US Treasury, we're working on a workaround. And we're pretty sure that there is a workaround.
Okay, I appreciate that. Obviously, the workaround, if that's the case, is going to require some additional discussion for us. But I just want to make sure that if we're planning to spend some of this ARPA dollars, again, on the Carnegie, et cetera, that we understand that. The other thing, I just wanted some clarification back on ARPA for the business district components. I don't know if there's a misunderstanding by the business districts or me. So I'll just say it's on me, but I just want to be clear. The money that you are recommending to be spent within the business districts, is that just to do design and planning work for any street improvements, or can that actually fund capital improvements?
You mean the 500?
Correct.
going
Well, I
toward
think it's like
downtown and
400
Old
Yeah.
Town.
or something, but yes, the 400 for Old Town and downtown.
It's
The
500
It's
for each.
500. isn't
it's 500.
Yeah.
The 500. Thank you.
Yeah. And the answer is yes, yes, and yes. They can use it for any of those. We're going to start a process with both Old Town and downtown, and let's have them determine how we use the money.
Okay, great. Let's see. On page, first off, Nathan, thank you. The research you did on the positions, I think, at least for myself, but hopefully for my colleagues, really helps paint a picture both with the fund balance trends, but also our staffing trends. And, I think that it's really important to note that, in 2008, there were over 100 staff, and the staff in the last 2 decades, have done a significant amount, well, I guess plus 2 decades, have done a significant amount of extra work without those additional positions. But I did want to just key in on one of the recommended positions, the Public Works Manager Engineer. How does that differ from the city engineer position that we have?
For the most part, we're looking at the idea of bringing that all back in-house. And quite honestly, right now, given where the job market is on things, we may stick with it as a contract engineering position. We've just identified that as functionally looking at the Public Works Department, and there's going to be 2 sides to the house. There's going to be the side that's doing the engineering, the asset management program, and developing the projects. And then the second side of the house is going to be implementing those projects. And right now, working with the staff, our contract city engineer, to try and figure out how that works. We're putting them in the budget. We're identifying the 2 sides of the house. And once we kind of figure it out, we have to get into the fiscal year to kind of work that up. But the bottom line is there's going to be 2 sides happening in Public Works. one position can't do everything. And especially the things that we're projecting to do. So there's just there's going to be a delineation of responsibilities and what people are doing. We still need to work the details out, but we've identified both of those functionally in the budget.
Well,
The
while
actual
you're,
city engineer position that's been vacant for a number of years, that position authority is still within this budget, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so thank you for that explanation.
and along with that, those are good questions. Will we be saving money by having this position and not contracting out then?
No. We have a budgeted amount that we're spending, and that's what we're doing. And it will come in the form of how we can do it. The reality right now, I had all this ambition that I thought that we were going to be able to go out and hire somebody.
Yeah.
I don't have much ambition on that at this point. It's a really tough labor market out there. There is just a void of anybody that has professional skills in engineering, building, planning, you name it. So
I think that's
we're still
happening.
trying to figure it out. But what we have done in the budget, we have identified it functionally within it. And we've
So
got a
it'll
little
be
bit.
either in-house or contracted.
Correct.
Okay.
But
But
the
it-
bottom line is both positions are still in the budget. You're delineating the duties.
Exactly.
But John, I'm sorry, Daniel and Miramara, the reality is contracting an employee is still cheaper than a fully loaded city employee, correct?
For engineers, I think I would agree with you. For this, I do think I do think for what we would get, it probably would be less expensive. But quite honestly, we're trying to figure that out a little bit. But especially for an engineer, to get the talent and the qualifications you need right now, if you were to ask me right now, I think the only way that we're going to do it is by doing it through a contract at this point.
Okay, thank you.
It may not be available in the current labor market, but there is some benefit to have it, even if it's slightly more expensive, to having an in-house person that does the work that is doing what's best for Auburn, not necessarily what's best for the consultant company they're working for. So, I mean, there's still some, I understand we want to save money by having consultants where it makes sense, but where we really should have staff people who are available and helpful to do the things that we need to get done as a city, I also think there's some benefit to that outside of just the cost.
Well, and it's a staffing philosophy as well. I think you've all touched on some of the highlights of it. Like coming from Elk Grove, we were largely a contract model city, as Councilmember Spokely can attest. And over the years, I was involved in a lot of analysis to actually migrate from, as bit by bit by bit, we brought it in-house. And the reality that we always found consistently was that contracting was a little bit more expensive, but you didn't really have to develop the person. They just showed up ready to go. And you had the agility to cut back however you wanted to. And typically, because their contract, they're going to turn out a ton of work. And that's just the way it is, because they get paid by piece a lot of times per project. So it had its advantages. And if you're going into an uncertain economy, that's one of the things that we considered in Elk Grove. Over time, however, we got to the point where we needed people all the time. We needed it faster. We needed it now. We were growing so fast. So we started bringing them in very strategically one by one. And that's another, it really comes down to philosophy. But on the front end, it tends to be more expensive, but you get the Rolls Royce right off the car lot, and the cost is not as high, and you don't have ongoing like pension obligations with contract employees as well.
Nathan, in the other cities that you're talking with, or the other associations you belong to, what are you hearing as far as forecasting for a recession? I asked that with, the Department of Finance really, even with a $100 billion surplus, is spending a lot of money on one-time items because of the concern of a recession. Not all, but a lot of the personnel expenditures are ongoing costs.
Yes.
So I'm just curious what you're hearing as far as forecasting for a recession.
So interestingly enough, I just finished a graduate school class that actually made me listen to about 50 different state budget presentations. And I heard ARPA, one-time federal ARPA, all over the place and a concern for making sure they had plenty in reserve. And there was not a ton of adding of new ongoing costs, to be quite frank with you. In bringing that strategy here to Auburn, obviously this is Auburn. We're not there. We're not Idaho. We're not Delaware. So we're looking very closely at who we are, what we need. So that really came down to some long discussions between John, Andy, and I, and HCL, a revenue consultant as well, and looking at, okay, if we're going to add people, how does that look? How sustainable is that? And that's why you see we strategically picked. We didn't add all the positions we wanted to. We picked the ones that we thought would get the best bang for our buck and really bring in some money from a grant standpoint and some windfalls and help us get more efficient, because we do identify some operational deficiencies, things that we're doing the longer way that we could be doing faster and smarter. And it may sound kind of counterintuitive, but in some cases, having the right people in the right places would free folks up to get some things done, to get some maintenance done before it gets more expensive. So it's kind of a lead loss in that way that we're looking to do. We are spreading those costs out over sustainable revenue sources, as you see through our enterprise funds. We very carefully did our forecast, and also at the same time, we can always reel back as needed. So that's, as positions come vacant, if the economy just absolutely took south, you don't fill vacant positions. You do what you have to do. You've worked things out. We're not there.
One of the things about the positions is that they aren't all necessarily just burden. The best example are the positions that will go in at the airport. We met last week with one of the managers for the FAA, and over the course of the next 6 fiscal years, FAA is going to have an additional almost 50%. They're going from like 3.6 billion to 6.6 billion dollars a year. We've added a position that's going to be going after the FAA monies. The admin assistant there, I can tell you right now, we have put a very high focus on looking at how we run the business there, looking at our leases, looking at our tie down spaces. That position will pay for itself in the first year simply by the operation. If you look at the positions that we've added for going for grant funds, we expect that we will be able to go to all the different granting agencies and actually bring in probably millions of dollars worth of money to pay for things, which, by the way, we will include in our overall cost allocation plan, that we will be able to recoup those monies. So,
you're being recorded.
yeah, and that's fine. We are doing some things that are meant to be very strategic, so that we are capturing the right amount of revenue that we have, that we operate our enterprise funds to the benefit of the enterprise. The idea that we're going to have a management analyst going and actually doing the maintenance, that we have somebody who's collecting the fees on various things. One of the things that, if you look at the slide number 14 or page 14 of the thing, you go back to 2008, there were all sorts of people that were working here and they were doing things. And then when you crushed everything down, I will tell you that there are some things that we haven't necessarily kept up with. The idea of making sure that at the airport that we are doing the lease adjustments and making sure that we're capturing that revenue. Same thing with sewer. As we do the asset management program, as we do our reporting with the regional board and all those things, these are positions that at the end of the day are going to be beneficial, not necessarily a burden on the city's general fund.
And Madam Mayor, just to follow up on that, what I really appreciate about these positions as well is that we're sharing the cost between the various enterprise funds, transportation, sewer, and airport. And so we're not relying on that general fund for these positions. And I really appreciate that. Having worked in the governor's office, and looking at overall operations and going into a recession, I recognize what we're doing and I appreciate that. And I agree with John that these are positions that are going to, with the goal of securing additional funds. But I do, again, want to point out the fact that we're not relying solely on the general fund for their salaries and benefits, that we are looking at those enterprise funds. So I just wanted to follow up on that.
Page 19.
I also wanted to say that I understand the interest in being risk averse, especially in an economy that's a little bit risky right now. But we also have to think about all the things that happen from losing all those staff, all the opportunities that were missed. We had, for a very long time, we had a not very happy airport, which is not really where we wanted to be. We had no general plan, which makes it so it's very hard for us to do a lot of economic development opportunities, to bring in new businesses, to do any kind of planning opportunities. No technology upgrades. We were behind in pretty much every area of technology for many years. So there's a lot of things that I understand the need to be careful, but we don't want to be so careful that we miss those opportunities to do those upgrades, to be efficient and to get the things done that we need so we can continue to grow as a community. And so when we have the opportunity, we should go. And then when we see that there's actually something to be afraid of, then we should definitely have those opportunities to pull back if we need to.
So that was the end of my questions, but Nathan, I just wanted to thank you again. I appreciate, I hear what my colleague is saying and completely agree. But I think it's really important that we be transparent because we need to not only plan for the future, but we need to ensure that if a recession is on our doorstep, just like the city was, a lot of these things that we are able to do today, we could not do 10 years ago because of the finances, because of a lot of those challenges. So the extra effort you put in with Andy's help, which I'm incredibly grateful that we are still able to pull on him as our historian, but more importantly, just on his broad support that he has statewide in forecasting these things. I'll just tell you, I am much more comfortable with where we are and what is being requested because of the numbers, and not just for me, but I think, back to where I think all of us love, which is being transparent to our community, that we're investing in more people, like Councilwoman Riddell Harris said, to do more work. But for me, I needed to make sure that, we were making smart decisions, knowing that a recession or fiscal challenges could not just be the economy, but, our gasoline deal won't be here forever. We know that, right? They very easily can move back to their home state. So appreciate, Nathan, all your hard work specifically, but as well as Andy and your other consultants. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councilmember.
Councilwoman Dowden Cavillo.
Yes, thank you very much. And I do appreciate this report. We have been incredibly transparent in that, this is, I don't know, the third or fourth or fifth time we've seen this. I know that the numbers get updated as time goes on, and it's great. So I don't have a lot of questions because we've visited this several times. I do feel very comfortable with what you have proposed. I did just want to say that I do appreciate that you did put the funds in for State Theater and also for the Auburn Symphony as well. I really do appreciate that, and would certainly encourage my colleagues to support that particular allocation as well. And I know that the State Theater has talked about making a request, an ongoing allocation like we do the cable access television in the library as well. And I'd like us to think about that for ongoing years. Right now, we provide like sponsorships to the State Theater. So they come to us and we sponsor this event, and the city always says yes, $5,000 here, $3,000 there, what have you. But, they're coming to us multiple times that year, or maybe just once a year. I'm not sure exactly, but maybe once. But they can't bank on those dollars, and I would really like to be able to say, here's $10,000. And then they're not coming to us for sponsorship. They know that money is going to be there. They can plan for those dollars. And to me, $10,000 is not very much in the grand scheme of things. They have already proven how financially solvent they are. They've made incredibly wise decisions, but I really would like to see that added. Again, with cable access TV, they get 12,000 and the library gets 12,000. Very important, and I don't have any problem with continuing to support, but I'd like to add the State Theater as a 10,000, and then they wouldn't have to come to us and ask for the sponsorships and so forth. It would just be a known source of revenue for them. And it also helps them in securing additional dollars because they can show that, the city of Auburn is partnering, not just through a sponsorship, but on a regular basis through an allocation. And again, 10 grand is not much. I mean, they certainly could request more. I'm not encouraging that, but, so, I mean, money that makes money. And, I think clearly that the State Theater does contribute, a lot more money back to our community. I know so many people that come from out of town, they eat, they shop, and then they go see a show. I mean, I run into people, my daughter's in school in Rockland. It's great. Yeah, we're seeing a show at the State Theater and we're here eating, dinner, and it's great. So, and I know they have the numbers to show that of, the return on the investment. So I would just really like to be able to see that on an ongoing basis.
Councilman Berlin?
Yeah, it's not just because we were peer pressured by these four incredibly powerful women here, but I have said this before, and maybe not to the four of you, but other representatives. I completely agree. I don't think that we need the State Theater and others to come in front of this council every single time. It seems like it can be more of an administrative process. And so I would fully support that. However, I'll add one caveat or a me too. I've brought this up, the same thing when we talk about the special events, especially the special events that we fund multiple times. That we need to make sure that we have some type of a fair and balanced process. The symphony, I know, is no longer here this evening, but there are other entities. The chamber puts on all of our parades, all of our 4th of July, and they too come to us and ask for sponsorships. And so I guess I would, they're not in there, but I think we need to think through, not to take away from the at least $10,000, because I'm supportive of that. I'm supportive of the symphony, these economic drivers. We did, I would note, increase the EDC's budget to continue to do one-time events, but these ongoing economic drivers of our community, I think we really need to make sure that we think through who else is there. The chamber's the only other one at the moment that I can think of that isn't as one-time, but does a lot for parades and such. So just something to think about. Then obviously I get beat up by them on the government affairs. So they would be upset if I didn't bring that up. So again, it's not to take away, because I'm fully supportive as well. And I would second whatever direction for future that we try to build that in, because I just don't think that year after year after year after year, if we can financially do it, the decision should be on staff to do it. It shouldn't have to come for $10,000 to the council. So,
And just really the quick clarification. It says 10,000 for the symphony and the State Theater. Is that for the 2-year budget, or is that just for this fiscal year?
I just did it this 1 year, and I'll tell you the reason why. We moved up significantly in our discretionary support this year. That is totally council's call, and I had no problem with that. However, this was a later addition.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to just assume that this was going to be something council would want to continue in perpetuity. Ergo, I kind of brought that up, that this was a one-time thing. And of course, as the years go by, there are going to be better years than some others. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Councilmember, is that there might be some years where it might be a little tighter. So having that flexibility and a well thought out process would absolutely make a lot of sense.
I'm supportive. I am curious who else will come forward. As you said, chamber, so I think personally 1 year for me is what I think we should go forward with. But I'm very supportive of both the symphony and the State Theater. But again, next year, we don't know where we'll be with the budget. So.
I'll also start with, I'm very supportive of all of supporting the State Theater, the symphony, and whoever else is deserving. But I would agree with Councilman Bellant's assessment that the EDC has been working really hard to develop some set criteria for what qualifies for those special events. And I think that it would just make sense to have a set criteria for if we wanted to do ongoing things that are kind of generally approved to go through, that we have a set criteria. So that way it just provides that transparency of, oh yeah, we're giving money to the symphony and the State Theater because they meet the whatever that criteria is. And then there's no question on that they're a fitting person or a fitting organization to give that funding to. And if the chamber qualifies as well, then great. But I feel like creating that level playing field and letting everyone be part of it versus picking and choosing just makes that transparency a little more viable.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that if we set some type of limit, so it's not just, from my perspective at least, these are the proven organizations that are economic drivers. And that allows, at least from my perspective, and I don't know how much the EDC is working on, but at least from my perspective, allows the EDC to worry about the seed money for a new event or for the one-time economic type of events, but allow the larger, and again, maybe that's something we need to give some direction to staff so that we can plan to put it in to the second year, is where's that threshold? What's that economic driver so that we're not just giving to our friends? Again, no offense, but my feelings are hurt. But the point is that it's clear to everybody that this is why these organizations are separated from the others. We all know it, right? We all understand the difference. But then those small organizations or those newer ones have a path forward. So
And they know that ongoing
like
cost is going to be there for next year.
Yeah,
So they
for
can, that
sustainable.
they can go through that process without having to go through the EDC's little one-off grant process. So that makes sense.
I do think it's important, though, to differentiate between events and like a service, so to speak. And so, events and that's what, right now, the State Theater is coming to us as a sponsor for an event. But what I'm talking about is that allocation, like with cable access TV and with the library, as a separate entity from all the different events or seed monies. To me, and I support the Economic Development Commission's streamlining of that process and developing criteria and so forth for the events. You got to be able to say, this is what we're going to bring in. I just think that it's appropriate for us, as we partner with we do partner with several organizations. We partner with the chamber, with the lease at 1103 High Street, which is great. We see the extreme value that we get from the chamber. And I don't take anything, I think that we should continue to support 4th of July and all those great things. But we also partner with the Placer County Visitors Bureau because again, they have $1 a year a lease as well. And so I think, here they own their own building, so we aren't able to provide that kind of a service. But I think that a $10,000 allocation would be appropriate. They are, and I know that they did put together a pretty big package and with some numbers on economic development, and that you didn't have the benefit of seeing that. And so I think that, John, it would be great for them, the council members, to be able to see that information. Because maybe that will help to drive that home too. But I do see a difference between events and, State Theater and, Symphony is providing that service that's bringing the dollars in as opposed to an event.
And, and I think everyone agrees. I think what I think we're saying is that let's be transparent, let's have a process. And if there's anyone else out there who I don't even, probably no one else or no other entity,
they're all going to
then
come
they
out
have an
now.
opportunity. They will come out of the woodwork.
The $10,000 is in the budget right now. So we have some time to figure out that
Right.
process
So
moving forward.
Well, it's 10 and 10, 20, right?
Well,
10 for
10 for
Symphony
each.
and 10
Yes.
yeah, so that's included in the budget now. So we can figure out over the next.
Right.
cycle
So,
how much we
so
wanna
I think Councilman Spokely, did you want to weigh in on that, or do you have other questions? And I don't even know if you're.
I'm ready. I'm ready for my other questions whenever you are, Madam Mayor.
That's fine.
I'll call him. and then
Go for it.
probably have some. Okay, yes.
So, we're coming out of an economy that's very prosperous right now. We've got $100 billion, nearly $100 billion surplus at the state level. We're talking about all the fun things, spending money, supporting organizations. I don't want to be the doom and gloom guy, but we're talking about taking $2.5 million out of our reserves. And yes, I'm concerned about super funding our reserve account, and I think one-time expenditures make sense given what we've been able to build up over the years. I'm a little concerned about our 2-year budget still being a negative balance, and I'd like to have Nathan or John address that. I get that we do mid-year updates and we get more current financials for that current year, but I don't like the idea of planning for a deficit year, even with the surplus that we have. The idea that we're hiring so many new people, I'm not saying we don't need them. I get that. I've got a business that I run, and we have a department that's half the size that it was back, 8, 9 years ago. and they do twice as much work based on efficiencies. And I think we have a lot of that happening in our departments at the city now. I think we've got highly qualified folks that do fantastic work and are super efficient doing it. And I'm not saying we don't need to hire people. I'm just saying I'm concerned about the trend that I'm seeing. We've got 24, I think it was, new hires in the last couple of years, or last year and the planned year coming up. And this economy is, in my opinion, highly volatile. I don't know where we're going. I don't want to kind of live in fear. So I'm in agreement with most of these hires. I appreciate, Nathan, you bringing back the data on which department and which, funding mechanism is going to be for the new hires in the current budget that we're talking about approving. I would have appreciated, and again, I know you're super busy and got a lot going on with this budget cycle and all the work you do, but I didn't see the same information on the multiple hires that we had in this current budget year that we're in. I think that was sheet 19 of your presentation. So I guess maybe that's just the old Kajiti part in the room who's concerned about us getting too far ahead of things here. I know that all of our city employees are overworked, and I know that we need to invest and hire more full-time equivalents, but that's the sheet. Thank you, Nathan. When I look at the proposed hires in 2022, 2023, I don't know where all of the current 2021 and 2022 hires are being funded from. I mean, I can make a guess just looking at the titles, but
Speak to it. I think I can pretty well speak to this now. I've spent a lot of time with these numbers for the last year. I can tell you the community risk reduction manager that lives exclusively in the general fund as of right now. The firefighters, same, they live in the general fund. The administrative assistants also live in the general fund. The economic development and planning manager is a shared cost. That hasn't changed from what it's proposed to be, 50-50 airport and general fund. The HR technician is general fund.
Yeah.
Dispatcher is general fund. The maintenance worker for public works, that position, largely general fund. That some of that is allocated out based on, I think one of our enterprise or one of our minor funds contributes some small percentage towards that. The reclassification public works manager, that's a shared cost. The transit manager, that is funded, I believe, also through transportation and some general fund. And so largely to your point, Councilmember Stokely, general fund has taken on a lot of new positions in the last year, a lot.
And looking at the increased labor costs versus the revenue costs, I think would be surprising. It certainly was for me in my own personal business, because we do these types of, looks back all the time. It's shocking how much of a steeper inclination the labor costs are over our revenues, and it's a concern for me. I'm not disagreeing that we need more staff. I just want to be the voice of tempering to make sure that we're all understanding what 2007, 2008 might look like again, because it will happen again. And, we will be having meetings talking about how many city employees we're laying off versus how many, we're trying to hire. So it'll come. Whether I'm on this council or not in the future, when that occurs, this conversation will happen for Auburn City Council. And I just want to be, maybe the voice of caution that we need to be careful. Again, I'm not saying that the staff members that have been presented here and the proposed employees and proposed hires don't make sense. I'm just saying that every hire needs to be a careful hire, and if we're all kind of under the same mindset when we agree to these new potential hires, if you look back at the amount of employees that we've hired over the last year, and you compare it to previous years, it's a significant increase. And yes, we had 103 employees back in 2006-07, or whatever that date was, but they went away. The city's been running really efficiently. And to my point with surveyors and more work being done with fewer employees just based on efficiencies and how great the employees are that we have at the city, I don't want that to get lost. And it's obviously a tough conversation to have. We've got money, we've got surplus, we've got extra, areas that we need to spend the money, but we just need to be careful as we move forward, in my opinion. Taking money out of reserves to fund one-time projects, I'm okay with. I've had conversations with folks about the super funding issue and why we need to kind of correct that. But I guess I'm just super cautious of the economy and world, influences that will impact us as a city. And I'd prefer to be on the conservative side of that, making sure that we can keep our employees employed when and if, actually when, things get a little crazy in our national economy, local economy. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
Thank you. Nathan, thank you for the presentation. Everything that we asked you to address, you definitely did, and you had way more visuals than I was expecting. They turned out great. I guess I also see things kind of in a different light. I don't see any fun things on your list. I see getting the basics right. When I look at the surplus, I see that we have a surplus because we haven't been doing some of the basics. We haven't been doing the general plan, which is required. It is really old. We haven't been updating our municipal code, which needs to be desperately updated. We haven't done the technical upgrades that desperately needed to be done in order to get those efficiencies. I guess I don't see the efficiencies of staff. I see staff scraping by and doing as much as they can, given the little resources that they had to be able to get those done. When other cities have those efficiencies and have those technologies that help them to get their work done. Being a good boss is not just about giving them money, but giving them the resources and tools that they need to accomplish their job. And I think that that's something that we're starting to do with our staff. And I think that that's something that we need to make sure we're providing for our staff. So I guess I just don't see that we can afford not to do these things. I see that we've saved the money and not spent the money where it needed to be spent over the last several years to create the surplus. I understand people are worried about the economy. I went to River City Bank had an economic forecast meeting last week, and I went to that, and they don't know whether there's going to be an economic downturn or not. So I don't know how we can predict that. It could be fine. One thing that they did say was that it's not going to be 07, 08 because we don't have people buying 5 houses that they can't afford the first one. The economy has been very careful. What we do have is an overheated economy because there's way too much stimulus dollars that got put out there. So we don't know. I don't know if anyone has any experience with what happens when the federal government puts a ton of money and pumps it into the economy. And so I don't know if we know what that's going to turn into, but we can't guarantee that that's, don't want to bet all my staff's happiness on the fact that going to turn into something next year. I'd rather make sure that we have the resources we need to be able to grow as a community and give our staff the resources they need to do their job well. And then if we end up getting to that economic downturn or that recession, then we'll deal with that when we get there. We're not saying we're going to spend the entire bank account. We're saying we're going to spend some on the things where we really need to spend it. And so I think that that is appropriate. And I trust our staff to know where we need to spend those dollars in order to do their jobs most efficiently. And so that's what I think we should do.
So my turn. And I know we have a couple council people who want to say more, but I appreciate the perspective of all our council here. I really do. I think we have people who are looking out and for the best of the city, on both ends. And I do want to say though that I think we're following our plan. Yeah, we are hiring. Our main priority is fire. That's our main expense. Our main priority are roads. We're spending $500,000 a year out of the general fund. Our main priority is updating and getting information so that we can move forward in a very calculated way. And we're doing that. And so I feel very comfortable with the budget that's been proposed, and questions have been answered. I feel very good about that. We're very transparent. The transparency here is excellent. I'm very happy with the ARPA money being that we're actually finally spending it. Downtown gets $500,000, Old Town gets $500,000, and they get to decide. And so that's wonderful. We'll finally, along with doing the important things, like I think Councilwoman Riddell Harris said, we do have to get up to speed. Technology is important. And as we see with the police department, we have to spend some money to make money, and we have to spend some money, but we also have to be very prudent about it. And I appreciate the concern, but my perspective is that I think this budget is again very conservative in terms of you have shown us the numbers. They make sense. We could benefit from the new hires in what our city manager said, though the return could be phenomenal, hopefully. And it's on record. So in any case, I do appreciate that. But I think Councilman Berlant and
Madam Mayor, I just had one quick follow-up question. I don't need the answer tonight, but it would be nice to know, out of whatever the number of employees we're at today, how many of them are classic employees versus how many of them have been hired under PEPRA? Just to kind of have a better understanding of some of those pension obligations and liabilities. I agree completely with what you just said. I appreciate the comments that are being said, because I think, we do need to ensure that we are being fiscal stewards of our taxpayer dollars, but we also need to make sure we're supporting the services that the residents want us to do. And, I too appreciate the dialogue tonight, but if I can get, and I don't know who else would like it, but if I can get a breakdown, just have an idea of what our risk is overall, because back to the MAT chart, I think that too does play into what potentially could be orange in the out years, because our liability is obviously lower as the PEPRA employees goes up. So, thank you, Madam Mayor.
And I just want to say, I too appreciate the dialogue that we've had today. And I think that it is important to be fiscally prudent, but I think it's also important to ensure that we can utilize those tax dollars for the benefit of our community. And they're not just sitting. I'm fully supportive of having our reserves. And we have separate reserve accounts. And I think we've done very well there. We've been very smart, because it is not if a recession will hit us. It is when it will happen. And it absolutely will happen, because we've seen it happen over and over and over again. I was on the council in 1998. We were coming in and then going out. And so, I mean, it is a cycle, and you need to be prudent. You need to be responsible. That's why you build up your reserves and you make smart decisions. And again, with the staffing, I think that the way our city manager has planned it, I like, again, this fiscal year, 21, 22, there were a lot of general fund positions. I recognize that. But with going forward with 22, 23, there are a lot of shared costs there. And I think that that's being fiscally prudent. And we really have been bare bones for too long. You know, when I guess I was first appointed in 2020 and I couldn't believe how bare bones we were and I appreciate that there were really tough decisions that had to be made in 2008. I left the council in 2006 and went to work again with the governor. And boy, we had to make decisions there too, right? Because we all were in that same boat. And it was very difficult. But we've just been bare bones for so long now. And just really, there's grants that we're not able to take advantage of because we just can't dedicate the time and the energy. So again, with that, I think it's important that we know it's not if, it's when, but I think that the spending plan that we have before us is certainly a prudent one and a responsible one.
Thank you. I think I can open it up to the public now. Is there any comments from the public?
Thank you very much. Again, it's Colleen Sands, President and CEO of the Auburn State Theater. The last couple of years, as everyone knows, have been really tough. But one of the things that our board of directors came up with a couple of years ago was a new mission statement. And our mission statement is that the historic Auburn State Theater enhances the quality of life, economic prosperity, and cultural awareness of our community and region, excuse me, by providing performing arts, film, and educational experiences. Some of the documentation that was sent to city manager included the number of people that have attended the theater during the 2018-2020 time period. Sorry, just haven't had any water. I'm not nervous. Anyhow, we had 35,800 people attend events during that time frame, which means we brought 35,800 people into downtown Auburn. I sincerely hope, and I know that the council appreciates the importance of having the theater in our downtown corridor, but we also need your help to continue doing what we're doing. It's important to be that we're seen by other funding agencies, that we have the support of our city, and that we are valued as an integral part of the economic vitality of Auburn on an ongoing basis. Unlike other nonprofits, and please know I'm not trying to compare in that sense, but we are a contrast to other nonprofits. We are a business. We have a mortgage. We have to pay insurance like many others, but we don't own the building and we don't have a break on our rent. And we actually physically bring people into downtown, which contributes to the city of Auburn as an economic boost. Restaurants, everything. We have numbers that we can share with you if they weren't included in that packet. We do 24 plus movies a year, 40 to 45 stage performances. We also are a rental facility, and then we have our own acting company. So, oh, thank you. Thank you. We're not asking for this as a one-time thing, as Alice alluded to. We're asking this as an ongoing thing to support what we do. And with your support and help, we can do even better, bringing more people from out of town, more people within town into the downtown area. So thank you very much. And I can answer any questions if you have them of me.
Have you thought about purchasing the building, or is it?
We have a mortgage.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
purchasing.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
sorry. I missed that part. Sorry.
That's one of our, yeah.
Sorry.
No.
Thank you.
Is it, we all obviously are in support of the State Theater. Is there a timetable? Are you trying to get anything particular or get a grant or anything that we need to work in a time frame? Because we're all saying that we would support an ongoing thing,
Right.
but we want to figure out how we want to do that in a fair way. I just wanted to make sure that we had
Right.
kind of specific timetable of something you're trying to go for that we would be able to help you with.
Right. No, at this particular moment, it's more of an ongoing situation that we need help with. And then we're able to attract grants from others as well, which we're applying for all the time. But with the support of the city on an ongoing basis, we show that we are truly an economic driver within the community.
Until we get that process established, could we write letters for you or do anything else to help you with getting your grant?
We'll be careful what you ask for.
Well, I mean, entity, I work for the city of Roseville. They write letters to help with getting
Yes.
transportation funding, and things like that,
Yes.
saying they're in
Yes.
support of this and that they're going to be help.
Yes,
know,
and
that
you,
kind of
and
thing.
the city has in the
Okay.
past, when we've done grants that needed that kind of documentation, everyone's always been willing to step up. So thank you.
We're just later in this process, so I don't
Yeah.
think that we'll probably be able to do it this time, but I just want to make sure that we're as supportive as we can be
Right.
while we try to figure out how to make sure that this gets incorporated, hopefully in the next cycle.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to continue to push for that ongoing. I mean, I know we've got it this year, so I'm going to continue to work for, so that starting next year it'd be ongoing. So I'm going
Great.
to continue this.
Thank you. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, can we, based on, I guess, the will of the council, but give direction to staff to start working on that methodology of who should get ongoing funds, and as quickly as staff can do that in a fair and equitable way, we can give that direction. Again, based on the will, if the will of the council is
Well,
make it permanent or make it ongoing, then it can be done. But I, for one, would agree that if staff can turn around as quickly as possible to determine what that level is, what's that economic driver threshold that then should get support. Because again, it's there are other organizations that are not here. And again, I'm not trying to say every nonprofit, because that's what the EDC is for. But the
Yeah.
chamber is not represented, and they do a significant amount of events as well. And I have no idea if they're even in the ballpark of where the State Theater is, because we haven't asked for that. And so I guess I personally would want to ask staff and direct staff to do that quickly, so that we can be responsive to the need to show that it's sustainable, but still be fair and transparent.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's something that should come back when the budget passes or doesn't pass. And then work toward that as soon as we can.
Yeah, if we can, let's get this budget going and I
think that's a priority.
I absolutely hear what I'm being told, and we'll bring it back, but let's get this budget.
We have
done.
more public comment on the budget.
I just wanted to say one other thing about our theater. We are unique. There's no other nonprofit, even the chamber, that's like us in the city of Auburn. None. Nobody can compare. So if you set the criteria based on the State Theater and bringing in 541 people from different cities, 541 cities represented at our theater, 388 of them are from California and 153 are from out of state. And we have the statistics to prove it. So, I mean, we would be unique in the idea that we're not an event. We're not asking for funds to throw a parade, and we're not asking for free rent like the chamber gets from the city of Auburn. All we're asking for is $10,000 a year.
But in all
And,
fairness,
and
they
I don't think
renovated the
anyone,
building though.
Pardon
I
me?
said in all fairness, as you know, they renovated the building and did all the costs to actually upgrade it so they could use it. Not arguing with you, but
No, no,
I
no,
don't
no.
want to
It should've
defund the
been more-
library, so we want to make sure we figure out something that's fair for
Right,
everyone.
right, right.
and I'm not arguing, because you may be, that's why for me, nobody may be comparable.
Right,
I just think that we need to do that due diligence.
yeah,
right.
and I
I
think
agree.
that's a discussion for another day, and we'll
Yes.
invite you back. You can even be on the committee to help figure out the,
Yes,
the
I want to
format.
be on another committee.
but we do appreciate
this I would.
your input.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anyone else
Oh,
have,
wait a minute. I wanted to introduce our board.
please do.
We have Chris Walsh. Everybody got to stand up.
You need to stand up,
We
please.
have, what's your name? These are all of our board members, so I don't have to name them, do I? 1,
Yes.
2, 3, 4, 5. And Deborah. Oh, yeah, Dean. Yep. Yeah. And they all sat through this whole minute.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
dedication right there.
Yeah. A whole
Thank
board.
you very much. Anyone else have any comments on the budget? Thank you. So this was just an update on the budget, and so we appreciate that.
Yes, and we will be getting you a copy of the proposed budget in print by Friday or this Friday. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we will go to city manager report.
Mayor and council, just one item reminder, we're going to have the barbecue for the Western States Endurance Run June 22nd. And it's going to be great. All of a sudden, it kind of came onto us like a wave today. It's like, oh my goodness, we better get this thing planned. So I don't ask for any details, but it's going to be great. And it's late, so I'll just.
Thank you very much. And I think we'll skip the city council reports if that's okay. Matt might have signed out already. But enjoy Oregon and thank you everyone for attending. And we will adjourn the meeting in honor of Ken Tokatomi and Frank Calabretta. So good night. That's it. Good night. Thank you.
Good night.